Chapter 26-23. Suddenly, Burial of Heaven's voice sounded in Ji Tianqing's mind. Don't be discouraged. We still have a chance. Although the King-grade divine array is powerful, you should be able to find a way to break it with your knowledge and experience. Moreover, this divine array has been around for tens of thousands of years. It has been corroded by the Earth's core divine flame and has not been repaired. Its power has long been reduced to less than 10%. Ji Tianqing said calmly, even if its power has been reduced by 95%, it is still a king-grade divine array. How can we break it? Burial of Heaven said playfully, even if the three of you work together with my strength, it is impossible to break it. However, we don't have to break it. We can choose to destroy it. Destroy it? Ji Tianqing's eyes lit up as he vaguely understood something. Burial of Heaven continued to persuade him, as long as you are willing to sacrifice yourself, there is still a chance to break this seal. Haven't you always kept the spacetime roulette? That is a genuine king-grade divine artifact. Although the spacetime roulette was destroyed by the combined efforts of several godly kings when you died, it did not collapse. But it hasn't been destroyed yet, and it can still help you. It is up to you whether you are willing to give it up. After saying that, Burial of Heaven fell silent and stopped persuading him. Ji Tianqing also fell silent as he weighed the pros and cons. Back then, he had relied on the spacetime roulette to break the seal of the Five Elements world and ascend to the Dragon Realm. During the Great War of the Gods 1,000 years ago, the spacetime roulette had been destroyed by several godly kings. However, he had kept this king-grade divine artifact in the Yang tomb. He had even fantasized that he would be able to repair the spacetime roulette when he returned to the godly king realm. However, it seemed that recovering to the godly king realm was still far away. The problem in front of him was urgent. Without an opportunity, it would be very difficult for him to increase his strength quickly. Soon, the great Emperor of Heaven Punishing would lead an army to attack him. He would definitely be defeated. At that time, he might not even be able to protect the Five Elements world. However, Ji Tianqing could not be sure if there was an opportunity in this ancient godly king's palace. On one side was the king-grade divine artifact that could be repaired many years later. On the other side was the problem in front of him and the slim opportunity. How should he choose? Ji Tianqing weighed the pros and cons for a few breaths before he made a decision. Let me observe this king-grade divine formation first. If I can find a flaw in it, I will sacrifice the spacetime roulette and take a gamble. If you can't understand this divine formation, then nothing will be of any use. Burial of Heaven reminded him in a timely manner, even though I'm forged from origin stones, my methods are still very crude. I haven't truly reached the heavenly god tier. I have to endure the constant burning of the earth core divine flame, and I can only last for a year at most. After a year, I might be deformed, damaged, and weakened. Ji Tianqing said firmly, then let's set a deadline of 1 year. With that, he used his God's Eye secret technique and focused on studying the king-grade divine array. As he observed the divine formation, he racked his brain to compare it with the king-grade divine formations in his memories. Time passed silently. Yin Yao and Ji Ke waited patiently, not wanting to disturb him. Unknowingly, half a year had passed. Ji Tianqing thoroughly observed the king-grade divine formation on the stone door, and he also searched through the king-grade divine formations in his memories. However, he did not find a corresponding way to break it. He was somewhat disappointed, but he was still unwilling to give up. He continued to observe and think. He even combined several king-grade divine formations at the same time and compared them with the divine formation on the stone door. 7 months, 8 months, 9 months went by. On a certain day in the 10th month, Ji Tianqing finally made a new discovery. He combined 4 king-grade divine formations and analyzed the structure of the formation. He finally found a way to break it. I understand now. The king-grade divine formation on this stone door actually contains the variations of the heavenly jade, heavenly pivot, heavenly chariot, and heavenly leader divine formations. To be more precise, the 4 king-grade divine formations that I know are all derived from this divine formation. Time passed, and the era was changing. A king-grade divine formation from the primordial age, after being dismantled and perfected by later generations of godly kings, could actually evolve into many king-grade divine formations. This was the manifestation of the improvement of the divine Tao. Ji Tianqing was wild with joy when he finally found a way to break it. Yin Yao and Ji Ku were also relieved. They revealed gratified and pleasantly surprised smiles. Ji Tianqing did not waste any more time. He hurriedly rushed to the depths of the sword world and took out the broken spacetime wheel from the Yang tomb. There were only 2 peerless divine items sealed in the Yang tomb. A drop of godly king blood and a spacetime wheel. The godly king blood had long been refined by Ji Tianqing. Now that the spacetime wheel had been taken out, the Yang tomb was completely useless. It gradually collapsed and dissipated. The spacetime wheel was a compass the size of a washbasin. It was cast from ancient bronze, and its surface was black and white. It was like yin and yang. The surface of the compass was full of divine runes and cracks. There were even a few gaps. Now, it was dim and lifeless, as if covered in a layer of dust. It looked simple, clumsy, and very ordinary. Only Ji Tianqing knew that this was a genuine king-grade artifact. When it was in perfect condition, it had once illuminated the heavens and intimidated the myriad of worlds. He held the broken spacetime wheel with both hands and murmured with emotion, "Old friend, you helped me rise and ascend in my previous life. You also accompanied me in conquering the heavens and slaughtering gods. But now, I have to sacrifice you in exchange for unknown opportunities and secrets. I don't know whether this is the right thing to do. But I have no other choice." With that, Ji Tianqing circulated his energy and forced out a drop of dark golden divine blood. He dripped it on the spacetime wheel. This drop of golden divine blood was the godly king blood that he had condensed 20% of his blood energy. It was enough to awaken the power of the spacetime wheel. Swoosh! In an instant, the simple and dark spacetime wheel lit up with dazzling 5-colored divine light. The surface of the wheel also released black and white divine light. It emitted earth-shattering spacetime divine power, as if it could break through all space and stop the flow of time. The power of a king-grade divine weapon was displayed at this moment. Although, this might very well be its final glory. Swoosh! Ji Tianqing cast out the spacetime wheel, causing it to transform into a black and white light that entered the stone door. Under his mental control, the black and white light shrunk 100,000 times and flowed along the king-grade divine array. A moment later, the black and white light entered a small array node and stopped. That array node was the key to breaking the divine array. In order to avoid being injured, Ji Tianqing drove the burial of heaven away from the temple and retreated to the magma sea thousands of miles away. Then, he used his mind to control the spacetime wheel and self-destructed. Inside the king-grade divine array on the stone door, the black and white light hidden in the deepest parts suddenly exploded. In an instant, the nodes of the array formation exploded, and a destructive divine power spread out, destroying millions of array formation veins. Boom! In the next moment, a 5-colored divine light burst out from the 1,000-foot-tall stone gate, and an earth-shattering sound rang out. Extremely violent and destructive shockwaves spread out like a huge wave, sweeping across thousands of miles. The tall black stone door was blown to smithereens on the spot. The burial of heaven thousands of miles away was also blown away by the shockwaves and fell into the magma sea hundreds of miles away. Chapter 26-24. The spacetime roulette no longer existed, and the door of the temple had turned into gravel and dregs, scattering in front of the door. The smoke and dust that covered the sky lasted for a long time before dissipating. In the sea of magma thousands of miles away, the sword of burial of heaven struggled for a while before it escaped from the sea of magma and flew back into the air. The divine sword that was as black as ink had been burned red and was emitting a terrifying heat. Fortunately, the sword of burial of heaven escaped in time. If it had been delayed for a few more hours, the sword would have been melted and deformed, and its power would have been greatly reduced. We did it. Although we sacrificed the space-time roulette, the door is open. The voice of the sword of burial of heaven sounded in Ji Tianqing's mind. Its voice was a little weak. It was obviously injured by the explosion of the space-time roulette. Ji Tianqing asked with concern, "Burial of heaven, how is your situation? Can you still hold on?" The sword of burial of heaven pretended to be relaxed and said, "Of course. You still have 2 months. Don't worry and go." Ji Tianqing did not say anything else. He used his mind to control the sword of burial of heaven and flew toward the source stone mine in the distance. Swoosh! A moment later, the sword of burial of heaven passed through the door filled with smoke and dust and entered the ancient temple. The light in the temple was dim, and it was dead silent. The ground was covered in dust. The earth core divine flame outside spread to the entrance of the temple, but it was blocked by a mysterious force and could not enter the temple. Seeing this scene, Ji Tianqing, Yin Yao, and Ji Ku all left the sword of burial of heaven and appeared in the temple. Anyway, the earth core divine flame could not corrode this temple, so they were safe. Rustle, 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 the three of them stepped across the dark floor, stepped on the thick dust, and walked toward the center of the temple. The temple with a radius of 10,000 feet was empty all around. There were only 12 huge pillars supporting the dome. The surrounding walls were carved with many ancient reliefs and dozens of words from the ancient era. Even with Ji Tianqing's experience and knowledge, he could not recognize those words. Only those abstract and crude reliefs could provide the three of them with references and simple clues. No matter what era it was, no matter how developed martial arts were, images would always be the easiest way to communicate. Ji Tianqing and the other two carefully observed for an hour before they finished looking through all the reliefs in the hall. Through those reliefs, they also learned a lot of useful information. This included the way of life and cultivation in ancient times. Sure enough, as the three of them expected, this region was really the territory of a certain unparalleled divine king. That deity king used his great divine ability to open up a tunnel that was hundreds of thousands of miles deep underground, connecting the surface to the Earth's core. With this bottomless tunnel as the center, the vast underground area in all directions was under the jurisdiction of the God King. There were more than 100 Sir Gods under the divine king. Through the few black discs in the abyss, one could enter the territories of the various Sir Gods. Every divine lord had tens of thousands of people under his command, and all of them were divine spirits with extraordinary abilities. Everyone lived deep underground and treated the black origin stones as food, as well as resources to cultivate and become stronger. Every few years or decades, the people under the divine king would hold a grand sacrificial ceremony to express their faith in the divine king and their longing and desire for the endless sea of lava. They did not believe in the heavens or the earth. They only yearned for the mysterious sea of lava, believing that it was the source of power. The people under the divine king were also divided into ranks. According to the strength of their cultivation, they were divided into different ranks. The higher the rank of the people, the closer they lived to the sea of lava at the earth's core. On the other hand, the further the people lived from the sea of lava, the lower their status. What kind of power is hidden in the sea of lava at the earth's core that the gods worship and yearn for it so much? Ji Tianqing muttered to himself, frowning as he pondered. Yin Yao said thoughtfully, as we expected, the ancient gods really did live underground, and there was a strict hierarchy that formed a complete nation. Ji Ku thought about it for a moment, and then a glint flashed across his eyes. He asked expectantly, with that bottomless pit as the center, the divine king's territory is in a radius of hundreds of thousands of kilometers. Many divine kings appeared in the five elemental world during the ancient era. Where are the territories of those divine kings? They should be deep underground, right? As long as we can find other bottomless pits, we can find the territories of other divine kings. Ji Tianxing collected his thoughts and nodded. Ku's words make sense. The five-elemental world during the ancient era was not limited to just one divine king. What we have seen so far is only the tip of the iceberg. Let's call the divine spirits that live in this area the ancients. Aside from the ancients, there are many more secrets hidden in the depths of the Shenwu continent, waiting for us to discover them. Now, let's see what secrets are hidden in the cave of the ancients' divine king. As he spoke, he led Yun Yao and Ji Ku to a corner of the hall. There was a secret door in the left corner of the hall, and behind it was a pitch-black staircase that connected to the second level of the temple. The three of them carefully climbed the stairs and quickly arrived at the second level. The layout of the second level was familiar to the three of them. There was a wide hall in the middle, and there were 6 rooms around it. The three of them split up and quickly investigated the 6 pitch-black rooms. They had originally thought that the rooms were used for secluded cultivation, and that there would be powerful divine formations set up within them. Or perhaps, there were stone tablets hidden in the rooms that led to the various divine lords' temples. But in reality, the 6 rooms did not have any ceiling divine formations or stone tablets. They were actually pill refinement rooms, tool refinement rooms, study rooms, and secret rooms used to practice formations. It was obvious that the divine king had used these rooms exclusively. It was a pity that the remaining pills, talismans, and tool refinement materials in the rooms had long since been cleaned out or turned to dust. Ji Tianxing and the other two's efforts were in vain, and they could only return to the hall. They could only place their hopes on the platform in the middle of the hall. The platform was 100 meters tall and had a radius of 1,000 feet, and it was engraved with densely packed runes of a formation. Ji Tianxing scanned the runes with his divine sense and discovered that there were as many as 600 million runes. They were very complex and profound. Moreover, these runes were very strange. He had never seen them before, and they did not seem to be the work of the ancient divine king. Strange, why would such a strange divine formation be set up here? Could it be that the ancient divine king learned it from other experts? Ji Tianxing frowned as he pondered. He stared at the runes of the formation beneath his feet and fell into deep thought. Suddenly, a thought flashed across his mind, and he felt a sense of familiarity. He recalled the mysterious formation that was covered by the chaotic fog in Kenshin's tomb, and his body trembled. I see. No wonder I felt a sense of familiarity. I feel like I've seen it somewhere before. Ji Tianxing exclaimed as he clenched his fists in excitement. His face was full of anticipation. Chapter 26-25. A long time ago, Ji Tianxing discovered that there was a mysterious formation in Kenshin's tomb. However, that divine formation had always been shrouded by chaotic fog. Even after he became stronger and used powerful sword techniques to break through the fog bit by bit. But he could only see the tip of the iceberg, unable to see the whole picture. Only after he recovered Kenshin's memories did he understand what was going on. That was the heaven-vanquishing formation that he obtained in the God realm as a divine king after a bloody battle in an incomparably dangerous secret realm. It was said that it was the highest secret of the God realm, a peerless treasure that countless divine kings would go crazy for. If anyone could understand the heaven-vanquishing formation, they would have the chance to discover the secret of immortality. The gods of the God realm were said to be omnipotent, plucking stars and plucking the moon was a cinch. However, even the strongest divine kings could only live for a few 100,000 years. But they could not escape the shackles of the cycle of life and death, eventually dying of old age and death. Therefore, immortality was only a legend. It was also the most unattainable dream of countless divine kings and gods. Because of this, when news of the heaven-vanquishing formation spread, it caused a sensation in the God realm. Countless divine kings went crazy for it, risking their lives to snatch it. Kenshin went through a near-death experience, fighting with countless powerful divine kings, and finally obtained the heaven-vanquishing formation. However, he helplessly discovered that, he could not understand the heaven-vanquishing formation at all. The mysterious heaven-vanquishing formation did not seem to be an item of the God realm, containing supreme power, but also extremely complex and profound. Kenshin could not comprehend the heaven-vanquishing formation's mysteries, but had to endure the pursuit and siege of various divine kings. But he would rather endure great danger than hand over the heaven-vanquishing formation. Even if he was about to die, he would seal the heaven-vanquishing formation in Kenshin's tomb. To put it bluntly, the heaven-vanquishing formation was closely related to Kenshin's death. In this life, after Ji Tianqing awakened his memories, he hid this matter in the bottom of his heart and did not mention it to anyone. He had long made up his mind to study the heaven-vanquishing formation's mysteries when he was strong enough in the future. But he didn't expect that. While he was still in the five elements world and had yet to ascend to the God realm, he once again saw an array that was very similar to the heaven-punishing array. That was right. The ancient formation on the high platform was very similar to the heaven-extermination formation. Regardless of whether it was the structure of the formation or the connections of the formation, it was full of mysteries and contained the grand Tao of heaven and earth. It had a supreme majesty. Ji Tianqing was certain that this was absolutely not a grand array that a divine king powerhouse could set up. The grade of the array formation also far surpassed divine king level. At this time, Yin Yao and Ji Ku both looked at Ji Tianqing and asked expectantly, "Tianqing, where have you seen this kind of formation before?" "Big brother Tianqing, what kind of formation is this?" "A teleportation array." Ji Tianqing's recollection was interrupted, so he collected his thoughts and answered seriously, "Back in the God realm, I used all my means and methods to snatch a heaven-punishing formation diagram from an ancient ruin, which provoked countless god kings to hunt me down. It was said that the heaven-punishing formation diagram was a supreme divine item in the God realm, and it contained the profound mystery of immortality. I tried to decipher that formation diagram, but I couldn't understand it at all. I didn't expect to see a similar formation in this primordial shrine." After hearing this, Yun Yao and Ji Ku were extremely shocked, and their faces were filled with disbelief. "What? Heaven-punishing formation diagram? The profound mystery of immortality? This formation is actually the same as the heaven-punishing formation diagram? How is that possible?" Yin Yao knew nothing about the heaven-punishing formation diagram. Ji Ku, on the other hand, knew it very well. After all, she had followed Kenshin and participated in the Great War, which ended with her death. She also knew very well that the heaven-punishing formation diagram was one of the reasons that led to the Great War of the Gods and Kenshin's death. That was why she was so shocked. Ji Tianqing nodded solemnly, pointed at the formation beneath his feet, and said, "Although this formation has 600 million meridians and looks very complicated, it is actually just a small part of the formation. In reality, this is only a small part of the formation. It's not complete. My guess is that the ancient race's king of gods must have obtained this incomplete formation somewhere and copied it down to study and decipher it." Yin Yao and Ji Ku both nodded in agreement. "Since you didn't manage to decipher the heaven-punishing formation diagram back then, it's unlikely that the ancient race's king of gods could have mastered this formation." Ji Ku recalled and asked thoughtfully, "Big brother Tianqing, I vaguely remember you saying that the heaven-punishing formation diagram wasn't complete. That was why you couldn't decipher it. The formation in front of us is also incomplete. Do you think it's possible that this incomplete formation is also a part of the heaven-punishing formation diagram?" A bright light flashed in Ji Tianqing's eyes when he heard this. "That's right. Ku's words make sense. It's indeed possible. I'll memorize this incomplete formation now and see if it can be combined with the heaven-punishing formation diagram," Ji Tianqing said excitedly. He stared at the incomplete formation beneath his feet and observed the formation's structure and meridian seriously. Yun Yao and Ji Ku remained silent and didn't disturb him. Unknowingly, for hours had passed. Ji Tianqing stood in the incomplete formation like a stone statue. He observed the formation attentively and memorized the direction of every meridian. Yun Yao and Ji Ku quietly left the high platform and searched around the hall. Not long after, the two of them found a secret door in the corner of the hall. Since Ji Tianqing was still studying the incomplete formation, the two of them waited patiently. 8 hours later, Ji Tianqing finally memorized the incomplete formation. A total of 600 million meridians of the formation were intertwined to form billions of formation nodes. They formed an extremely complicated incomplete formation. However, he had memorized every meridian and node in his divine soul. It was incomparably clear and would never be forgotten. Only he, who had the strength of a true God, an eidetic memory, and a powerful divine soul, could memorize this incomplete formation clearly. If it were other true gods, they wouldn't be able to do it. Ji Tianqing took out the burial of heaven sword and chopped the high platform into pieces, destroying the incomplete formation. In this way, besides him, Yun Yao, and Ji Ku, there wouldn't be a fourth person who could see the incomplete formation left behind by the ancient race's supreme being. After that, the three of them went through the secret door in the corner of the hall and followed the dark stairs to the third level of the temple. The layout of the third level was very strange. There was only a huge hall with a radius of 10 miles. It was surrounded by pitch-black walls. There was a huge magma pool in the middle of the hall. It was filled with dark red magma with purple earth core divine flames rising from it. As soon as Ji Tianqing and the other two entered the hall, their protective divine light was burned by the earth core divine flames. They felt piercing pain all over their bodies. At the critical moment, Ji Tianqing hurriedly took out the burial of heaven sword and brought Yun Yao and Ji Ku into the sword's world. With the protection of the burial of heaven sword, the three of them could stay in the hall. Ji Tianqing's divine sense merged with the burial of heaven sword. Using the burial of heaven sword as his eyes, he observed the situation in the magma pool. Soon, he saw a basin-sized dark golden light floating in the middle of the magma pool. It emitted powerful divine power waves and suppressed the boiling magma pool. Chapter 26:26. After tens of thousands of years, there is still a pool of lava here, and its power is still as violent as ever. That ball of golden light in the middle of the lava pool still hasn't been extinguished. Ji Tianqing stared at the dark golden ball of light in the lava pool, and his heart was filled with anticipation. It must be a godly king-level divine item. Otherwise, it wouldn't have been preserved for tens of thousands of years. This thought flashed through his mind, and he released his divine sense to carefully investigate the lava pool and the ball of dark golden light. An hour later, he finally understood. The reason why the lava pool was filled with lava and churned endlessly with violent power was because of a godly king-level divine item. This was because the magma pool was a godly king formation. It was connected to the boundless magma ocean and would constantly devour the magma. As long as the sea of lava existed, this lava pool would always be full. As for that ball of dark golden light, it wasn't some divine pill or divine weapon. It was really just a ball of light. However, it was a godly king-level ball of light. Its power was divine, majestic, violent, and domineering. It could suppress the lava pool and absorb the power of the sea of lava, and it would never dry up. Ji Tianqing was pleasantly surprised. This should be a ball of light condensed by a godly king of the ancient race. Since it's stored on the third floor of the temple, its importance is no less than that mysterious incomplete formation. Ji Tianqing made up his mind that he had to get his hands on that ball of light. He, Yun Yao, and Ji Ku had wasted a few years and used all their methods and efforts. How could they return empty-handed? However, how to get that ball of light was a big problem. Burial of heaven, lend me a hand. Ji Tianqing quickly came up with an idea. He let the burial of heaven pass through the raging earth core divine flame and fly to the middle of the lava pool. The burial of heaven arrived above the dark golden ball of light and floated in the earth core divine flame. Ji Tianqing released his majestic divine power and used the burial of heaven to execute a capturing technique. Swoosh! A huge golden dragon claw flew out of the sword of burial of heaven and grabbed at the dark golden ball of light. However, the golden light dragon claw was only halfway there when it was incinerated by the violent earth's core divine flame. It turned into specks of golden light and dissipated. Ji Tianqing frowned helplessly. There was nothing he could do about it. The earth core divine flame in the lava pool had reached the 6th or 7th level of the heavenly god realm. The divine technique he used could not withstand the burning of the divine flames at all. After a moment of hesitation, he controlled the sword of burial of heaven and slowly approached the golden light. When he got close to the ball of light, he used the sword of burial of heaven to stir the ball of light. He planned to pull the ball of light out of the lava pool and then try to take it away. However, the dark golden ball of light did not move at all. It was as if it had grown roots and was firmly fixed in the lava pool. Ji Tianqing failed again. Fortunately, the dark golden ball of light had no consciousness and did not know how to attack or counterattack. Otherwise, the sword of burial of heaven would immediately be destroyed and the power of a godly king erupted. Ji Tianqing was helpless against the dark golden ball of light, but he was unwilling to give up. He could only think hard and find another way. Yun Yao and Ji Ke also helped to come up with ideas. Ji Tianqing made a few attempts, but they all ended in failure. In the end, he really had no choice but to use his last move. A method that was not a method. Drip blood. This method was very old-fashioned, but it was very common in the martial arts world. It often had unexpected results. In particular, Ji Tianqing's divine blood was not simple. He had fused with the heart blood of his previous life, a drop of true godly king blood. This time, he took a risk and decided to use 50% of his blood to try to establish a connection with the dark golden ball of light. When Yun Yao and Ji Ke learned of his decision, they were immediately shocked and hurriedly tried to dissuade him. Tianqing, you can't do this. Stop. Big brother Tianqing, if you lose 50% of your blood, your vitality will be greatly damaged, and your strength will drop. However, Ji Tianqing had already made up his mind. He insisted on circulating his energy and condensing his blood. Yun Yao and Ji Ke were very anxious and worried, but there was nothing they could do. The two of them could only protect Ji Tianqing. If he was in any danger, they would immediately help him. Buzz! Ji Tianqing's body shone with golden light. His vitality surged as he soared into the sky. He circulated his energy for 100 breaths and condensed 50% of his blood into a thumb-sized golden drop of blood. Whoosh! The golden drop of blood was released by the sword of burial of heaven and landed on the dark golden ball of light. When the drop of blood passed through the earth's core divine flame, the raging fire burned the drop of blood, but the drop of blood remained intact. In the blink of an eye, the golden drop of blood landed on the dark golden ball of light and quickly spread, merging into the ball of light. At that moment, the dark golden ball of light that had been silent for tens of thousands of years seemed to have a life of its own and was revived. Buzz! Dazzling golden divine light suddenly bloomed. It was like a huge cloud that filled the entire hall. In an instant, the hall within a 5-kilometer radius became golden and dazzling. Vast and mighty divine power erupted from the ball of light and surged in the hall. Chapter 26-27. The sword of burial of heaven was already at the end of its tether. Once it was engulfed by the lava and divine fire, it would be difficult for it to escape the temple. It would definitely be melted into a pool of molten iron and lose all of its power. At this critical moment, Ji Tianqing instinctively controlled the dark golden ball of light to envelop the sword of burial of heaven. Swoosh! The dark golden ball of light was hollow. The sword of burial of heaven shrunk several times after entering it. However, the pressure on it was greatly reduced and it was temporarily safe. Then, the earth-shattering earth core divine flame and magma filled the hall, drowning the dark golden ball of light. However, the dark golden ball of light was unharmed. The earthly divine fire and lava could not corrode it. Seeing this, Ji Tianqing and the other two heaved a sigh of relief. The three of them left the world within the sword and stayed inside the dark golden ball of light to observe the situation around them. With the protection of the dark golden ball of light, no matter how fierce the lava and divine fire were, the three of them would not be threatened at all. As the endless lava poured into the temple collapsed completely. The entire origin stone mine was also engulfed by the lava and sank into the sea of lava. Rumble. Loud rumbling sounds rang out incessantly. The shaking of the earth and mountains continued for a long time. Ji Tianqing controlled the dark golden ball of light and flew through the sea of magma at a moderate speed, flying upwards. Soon, the dark golden ball of light entered the bottomless pit and flew upwards. He clenched his teeth and endured for 2 hours. Finally, he could not hold on any longer and fell unconscious. After all, he had lost 50% of his effort and was greatly injured. Even his strength had quietly declined and returned to the second level of the true God realm. Yun Yao and Ji Ku were filled with worry. They hurriedly used their divine arts to heal Ji Tianqing's injuries and replenish his divine power. At this time, the dark golden ball of light had already flown upwards for 60,000 miles and reached the round plate 150,000 miles underground. Ji Tianqing was unconscious and no one could control the ball of light. It quietly stopped on the round plate. The boundless earth core divine fire enveloped it tightly. Not only was it not affected, it even absorbed the power of the earthly divine fire and slowly strengthened itself. Unknowingly, 5 days had passed. After Yun Yao and Ji Ku's treatment, Ji Tianqing gradually regained consciousness. Even though his aura was still weak and his face was still pale. But now that he was out of danger, he was able to maintain his consciousness and cultivate normally and heal his injuries. Yun Yao looked at him lovingly and asked, "Tianqing, you didn't hesitate to use 50% of your efforts to obtain this divine king's light. In the end, not only was your vitality greatly damaged, you even dropped a level. What is the effect of this God King's light that you are willing to pay such a heavy price for?" Ji Ku didn't understand either. He said with a heavy heart, "Big brother Tianqing, if there's a king-grade divine artifact in this ball of golden light, it's reasonable for you to risk your life like this. But that was just a ball of divine light. Back then, when you were at your peak, you could release millions upon millions of rays of God King light with a flick of your finger." Yun Yao and Ji Ku both felt that Ji Tianqing paying such a heavy price for a ball of God King light was really not worth it. Ji Tianqing waved his hand, indicating that they didn't need to worry. He explained patiently, "That's right. This is not a king-grade divine artifact. It's just a ball of God King light. But it's not an ordinary God King light. It's a protective divine light that the ancient race's God King spent hundreds of years to carefully refine. If I was still Kenshin and had the strength of a peak God King, I wouldn't be interested in this ball of God King light. But now, we only have the strength of a stage 1 or stage 2 true God. How can we be compared to the past? This ball of God King light can not only protect us, but it can also block the magma and divine flames from the Earth's core. It's what we need the most. Even if we have to pay a heavy price, it's worth it." After listening to his explanation, Yun Yao and Ji Ku felt much better. Ji Tianqing pointed at the bottomless pit beneath his feet and continued, "The millions of divine beings under the ancient race's God King don't believe in heaven and earth. Instead, they worship and yearn for the magma at the Earth's core. They are all powerful divine beings, not ignorant commoners. There must be a reason why they worship and yearn for the magma at the Earth's core. Moreover, this protective divine light that the ancient race's God King spent a lot of effort to refine can not only travel through the magma ocean, but also suppressed the Earth's core divine flames. Have you never thought that there might be some heaven-shaking secret hidden in the depths of the Earth's core? Yin Yao and Ji Ke's bodies shook. The two of them looked at each other and understood what Ji Tianqing meant. Tianqing, don't tell me, you still want to enter the magma ocean and explore the secrets in the depths of the Earth's core? Big brother Tianqing, you've wanted to explore the Earth's core for a long time, but you're not strong enough. So, you want to obtain the God King's light at all costs. Ji Tianqing smiled and nodded. That's right. We've gained a lot from exploring the ancient race's divine palace this time. Moreover, we've already reached the Earth's core and are close to the mystery and the truth. Let me go back and recuperate for a while. Then, I'll regroup and continue exploring. Yin Yao and Ji Ke considered for a long time before nodding in agreement. After that, Ji Tianqing used the Golden Pagoda to bring Yin Yao and Ji Ke back to the Divine Pagoda. The three of them returned to the sixth level's distorted spacetime and started recuperating in seclusion. Yin Yao and Ji Ke were fine. They weren't injured, but they had used up a lot of their divine power and were mentally exhausted. After recuperating for half a month, the two of them recovered to normal. Ji Tianqing's vital energy was greatly damaged, and his strength had dropped to the second level of the true God realm. The situation was a little complicated. He first recuperated for 10 years before recovering his vital energy and recovering from his injuries. However, it was very difficult to recover the 50% of his God King blood that he had lost. After that, he cultivated in seclusion for another 15 years before his strength returned to the third level of the true God realm. However, he didn't end his seclusion. The drop in his cultivation level this time was a blow to him, but it was also a training and opportunity. His divine soul and will became even more resilient and powerful. His foundation of the divine Tao was also more solid and firm. Taking advantage of this opportunity, he charged to the fourth level of the true God realm in one go. This process was very long, but he had enough patience. Unknowingly, another 20 years passed. Ji Tianqing's strength broke through the third level of the true God realm and reached the fourth level of the true God realm. Only now did he end his seclusion cultivation. It had been 45 years since he started his seclusion to recuperate. Only 11 months had passed in the outside world. During this period, Yin Yao and Ji Ke cultivated in seclusion for more than 20 years. In the remaining time, the two of them were busy dealing with the Divine Kingdom's government affairs and teaching Chen Chen and Yiya. After Ji Tianqing came out of seclusion, he saw that the Shenwu continent was safe and sound, and that the Heaven Punisher hadn't invaded. Thus, he left the Divine Tower alone and headed to the hidden Dragon Abyss in the northern part of Tianqing's Divine Kingdom. 2 days later, he passed through the abyss and arrived at the human territory in the Earth's core. The humans in the Earth's core were mining origin stones as usual, working hard without complaint. Ji Tianqing headed to the depths of the Sea of Lava, passed through the mysterious black hole, and returned to the ancient God King's palace. This palace, which was 1,500 kilometers underground, hadn't changed at all. The changes 180,000 kilometers underground hadn't affected it in the slightest. Chapter 26-28. Ji Tianqing did not bring anyone with him. He moved alone. Through the teleportation array in the palace, he arrived at a depth of 60,000 miles and entered the bottomless pit. Then, through the teleportation array on the disk, he walked step by step toward the deepest part of the bottomless pit. When he reached a depth of 180,000 miles, he could not withstand the Earth core divine fire, so he used the light of the God King. With the protection of the dark golden ball of light, he could move freely in the sea of fire. There was a boundless sea of lava in all directions. The Origin Stone Mine and the ancient race God King's cave abode had long been submerged by the sea of lava. Fortunately, the sea of lava had already calmed down and did not pour into the bottomless pit. What Ji Tianqing was worried about did not happen. He used the light of the God King to protect his body and entered the sea of lava, flying toward the depths of the Earth's core. Swoosh! The dark golden ball of light sped through the sea of lava, getting closer and closer to the Earth's core. The pressure on it also increased. However, wherever the dark golden ball of light passed, the lava would avoid it as if it had a life of its own. The terrifying pressure and high temperature were all isolated by the dark golden ball of light. It did not affect Ji Tianqing at all. As time passed, the depth he went became more and more exaggerated. From 180,000 miles to 250,000 miles, 300,000 miles, 400,000 miles, 500,000 miles, unknowingly, a month had passed. The dark golden ball of light was still speeding through the sea of lava, as if it would never reach the end. Ji Tianqing's position was already 10 million miles underground. This was the depths of the Earth's core. Since ancient times, no one had ever come here before. In this month, Ji Tianqing did not encounter any obstacles, nor did he discover any living creatures. It was as if he was lost in the endless sea of lava. He could not find a way out, nor could he distinguish north from south. The scenery around him was an eternal dark red. If not for the increasing pressure on the dark golden ball of light, causing it to fly slower and slower, he would have suspected that he was walking in the same place. As I expected, the depths of the Earth's core is endless lava. The entire five elements world seems to have mountains, rivers, vast continents, and oceans on the surface. But in reality, the interior of the world is endless lava. I wonder why the ancient race gods worship the sea of lava in the Earth's core. There's nothing special about it. Ji Tianqing could not help but mutter in his heart. However, he had already explored for a month, so he couldn't just give up. Therefore, he could only continue to explore and fly deeper into the magma sea. 2 months, 3 months, 4 months. Soon, half a year had passed. Ji Tianqing couldn't remember exactly how far he had flown to the core of the earth, and how many tens of thousands of miles he was from the surface. He only knew that this half a year of exploration was incomparably boring. He had never encountered any life forms, and there was only dark red lava around him. The resistance the dark golden ball of light was facing was increasing, and its flying speed was also decreasing. Furthermore, the ball of light's energy had been greatly depleted, and its color had become even dimmer. Ji Tianqing couldn't help but feel worried. How could this be? Was there nothing else in the depths of the Earth's core other than lava? For half a year, I've searched close to 100 million miles, but I haven't found a single clue. Even the Divine King's light couldn't withstand such consumption, and its power was constantly weakening. I'll search for another 3 months, and if there are still no clues, I can only return to the Divine Pagoda. If the power of the Divine King's light was exhausted, it would not be able to help him withstand the terrifying heat and pressure. Once he lost the protection of the Divine King's light, he would be crushed into minced meat in an instant, and burned to ashes by the lava. Day after day passed. Ji Tianqing suppressed his anxiousness and calmed himself down, patiently searching the area. Finally, on the 85th day, he saw a patch of black appear in the magma sea in front of him. Looking from afar, that patch of black looked like a small mountain of origin stones. However, when Ji Tianqing flew closer, he saw clearly that it was a black vortex with a radius of 10,000 miles. The enormous vortex was moving rapidly in the magma, wildly devouring the endless magma. The terrifying devouring power enveloped a radius of hundreds of thousands of miles. The dark golden ball of light was also being pulled, flying toward the black vortex. Ji Tianqing was shocked, and he cursed in his heart. He hurriedly controlled the dark golden ball of light and fled into the distance. However, the black vortex pounced over like lightning, far exceeding the speed of Ji Tianqing's escape. The devouring power became stronger and stronger, and the dark golden ball of light gradually went out of control, and was soon swallowed by the vortex. Ji Tianqing's vision turned black, and he fell into boundless darkness. His divine sense and 5 senses were isolated, and he was immersed in the darkness, unable to do anything. It's over. I'm dead for sure this time. This thought flashed through his mind before he fainted. After an unknown period of time. Perhaps it was a day, or perhaps it was a year. Ji Tianqing's consciousness gradually woke up from the muddle-headedness. I'm still alive. Thank goodness. This thought flashed through his mind, and he only felt a splitting headache. After checking, he discovered that his divine sense had suffered heavy injuries, and his consciousness was somewhat blurry. After panting for a moment, he gradually opened his eyes. When he saw the surroundings clearly, he was instantly stunned. The Divine King's light had not shattered, and he was still lying in the dark golden ball of light. However, the dark golden ball of light was suspended in an alternate space. This alternate space had a radius of more than 100,000 miles, like a huge golden ball of light. Outside the ball of light was an endless torrent of magma, surging and rolling wildly, forming a gorgeous and colorful scene. And inside the ball of light, there was a golden mountain peak that was thousands of feet tall, standing in the middle, emitting a dazzling golden light. At the foot of the golden mountain peak, hundreds of millions of colorful branches extended out, spreading out on the ground like meridians. The air was filled with golden divine power, and the surroundings were dead silent, without any signs of life. Not only were there no birds or beasts, there was not even a tree or a stalk of grass. This was a special space that was deathly silent, yet grotesquely colorful and dazzlingly colorful. Ji Tianqing stayed in the Divine King's light, staring with wide eyes as he sized up all of this, and his eyes revealed a strong look of amazement. What terrifying divine power! What a powerful aura! Where is this place? Could it be the core of the five elements world? Ji Tianqing thought of Purple Heaven Cave. That special mystic realm was located in the underground core of Purple Heaven Planet, and it contained supreme mysteries. And this golden ball of light in front of him was similarly mysterious and powerful, and it was located in the depths of the core. At the thought of this, Ji Tianqing's heart was filled with excitement and anticipation. He hurriedly drove the Divine King's light and flew towards the golden divine mountain in the distance. Along the way, he saw hundreds of millions of branches that spread out all over the ground. Those branches shone with five-colored divine light, exuding an ancient, majestic, and mysterious aura that was even stronger than the power of a divine king. This is the power of the world. Ji Tianqing's eyes widened, revealing a strong look of surprise. This is indeed the core of the five elements world. Chapter 26-29. The so-called power of the world was the original power of a star. When the world power multiplied and strengthened, it could turn a barren star into a world with life. Conversely, if the world power collapsed and dissipated, the entire world would also be destroyed, turning into dust. Ji Tianqing was once a transcendent divine king and had also come into contact with the world power. He was deeply aware that grasping the world power meant grasping the life and death of a world. The life and death of that world was between his thoughts. However, the world power only existed in the core position of the world. Non-divine king powerhouses could not come into contact with it. But he did not expect that he, who was just a true god, could actually barge into the core of the five elements world and come into contact with the sacred and powerful world power. This was absolutely the greatest surprise in his life. Could it be that I was protected by the Divine King's light, that's why I could barge into the core of the world? If not for the protection of the Divine King's light, I would have long been destroyed by the pressure and high temperature of the Earth's core. I would also be unable to withstand the power of space tearing and would have long turned into ashes. Ji Tianqing thought for a moment and guessed the reason behind it. For him to be able to come here by luck, it could not be separated from the Divine King's light. Looking at it this way, what a wise decision it was for him to sacrifice 50% of his effort to refine the Divine King's light back then. 4 hours later, Ji Tianqing arrived near the Golden Mountain Peak. The resplendent 10,000 feet mountain peak was even more dazzling than the sun, emitting surging world power that overflowed to the heavens. The 5 colored veins that covered a radius of 100,000 miles extended out from the bottom of this mountain peak. Ji Tianqing immediately understood. This mountain peak is the core of the 5 elements world, and also the core of the entire star. Once this golden mountain is destroyed, the entire world will collapse, and the star will also become barren. Conversely, whoever can refine this golden mountain will be able to control the entire 5 elements world. Ji Tianqing stared at the golden mountain with a burning gaze, muttering to himself. The hot blood in his entire body was ignited. An incomparable impulse and desire was born from the bottom of his heart. Who could remain calm in the face of a star's core? If the 5 elements world was just an ordinary mortal world, perhaps Ji Tianqing would not be so moved. However, he had already confirmed that the 5 elements world was once one of the main worlds. It was comparable to the God realm and the Dragon realm. Since he had come to the core area of the 5 elements world by chance, what reason did he have to let go of the star core? The core of this planet is mine. The entire 5 elements world is mine. Ji Tianqing licked his lips and growled excitedly. After calming himself down, he began to cast a spell. He released 2 streaks of golden divine power and struck the golden mountain peak. However, when the 2 divine powers landed on the golden mountain, there was no reaction at all. The surging power of the world directly bounced the 2 golden lights away, shattering them into pieces. This outcome was within Ji Tianqing's expectations. His lips curled into a bitter smile as he muttered, as expected, only the power of a divine king can shake the core of a star. Although he was mentally prepared, this result still made him feel somewhat helpless. After weighing the pros and cons, he activated the power of the dark golden ball of light and released a golden divine light that blasted toward the golden mountain. The golden light that split out from the dark golden ball of light was the true power of a divine king. Boom! The golden light blasted the golden mountain and exploded with a deafening sound. The golden mountain trembled a few times but was not shattered. There was not even a crack. The divine power merged into the golden mountain and radiated outwards, enveloping a radius of 1,000 feet. Ji Tianqing had a bloodline connection with the divine king's light. Naturally, he could also connect with the golden mountain through the divine king's power. He could clearly sense that the golden mountain was indeed the core of the planet. Its sturdiness was comparable to a top king-grade divine weapon. The core of the planet was like a golden stone, but it seemed to have a life of its own. It was filled with the veins of the world. They were like tiny blood vessels in the human body, interconnected. Ji Tianqing's mind was immersed in the golden mountain peak as he carefully observed it. Gradually, he formed a subtle connection with the core of the planet. Many strange images also appeared in his mind. There were pitch-black underground rock formations, mountain ranges buried deep underground, lush primitive forests, and a vast and boundless ocean. Of course, there was also a dark red sea of magma. As his mind spread out and came into contact with the veins of the world one after another, the images that appeared in his mind also constantly changed. The images were incomparably clear as if he was there. This feeling was very subtle. It was as if he had transformed into the 5 elements world and seen the scenery of various parts of the world. The feeling of controlling the world, it's been a long time, Ji Tianqing was intoxicated. He closed his eyes and carefully sensed. A gratified smile appeared on his face. 1,000 years ago, Kenshin had also refined many planet cores. He even refined more than a dozen planets into pearls and made them into heavenly star chains. Therefore, he was not unfamiliar with the core of the planet. He was also very familiar with the feeling of controlling the planet. However, only an hour had passed, and Ji Tianqing had only come into contact with several tens of thousands of veins of the world. His consciousness became more and more dizzy. The images in his mind also became blurry. He was gradually about to faint. Sigh, my current strength is really too weak. Only persisting for an hour, only seeing the tip of the iceberg of the 5 elements world, and my mind can't hold on anymore." Ji Tianqing sighed helplessly. He hurriedly withdrew his mind and sat in the dark golden light cluster to meditate and cultivate. If divine power was depleted, he could use source stones to quickly recover. But when his mind was exhausted, his divine soul was tired. He could only slowly recover through cultivation. After a full half a month, Ji Tianqing's divine soul finally recovered to normal. He used his mind to communicate with the planet core again, attempting to refine a certain world vein. Those planets that I refined back then generally had tens of billions of world veins. It was very complicated. The 5 elements world's grade is even higher than those planets. The number of world veins must have reached tens of billions. As long as I can refine tens of billions of world veins, I can control the entire 5 elements world. Ji Tianqing pondered silently. He only felt that the pressure was very great. The burden was heavy and there was still a long way to go. But this was also something that could not be helped. Wanting to refine the planet core, there was no shortcut to speak of. Even a divine king expert had to refine the world vein step by step. Ji Tianqing did not speak anymore. He concentrated on controlling his mind and refining that hair-like world vein. Although that world vein was as thin as a hair, only slightly more than 10 feet long. It represented a mountain range that was hundreds of thousands of miles long in the southern wilderness. When Ji Tianqing refined this world vein, the image of that huge mountain range appeared in his mind. Every grain of sand, every flower, every living being in the mountain range appeared clearly in his mind. It took him a total of 5 days to refine this world vein. In this way, that huge mountain range was under his control. He only needed a thought to control the life and death of that mountain range. Chapter 26:30. Although the matter of refining a world vein made Ji Tianqing very excited and yearned for it. Controlling a mountain range that was hundreds of thousands of miles long also gave him a sense of accomplishment and was full of excitement. But he had no choice but to face reality and consider a very serious problem. A full 5 days and only refined 1 world vein. There are at least several tens of billions of world veins in this star core that is 10,000 feet tall. If I want to refine the entire star core, how long will it take? At least a few 100 million years, right? This answer made Ji Tianqing roll his eyes, revealing a helpless expression. A few 100 million years. Even the most powerful divine king only has a few 100,000 years of lifespan. And I only have several tens of thousands of years of lifespan. At this speed, even rebirth 10,000 times might not be enough. This problem made people despair just thinking about it slightly. Ji Tianqing could only withdraw his thoughts and consider other methods. Using the power of a divine king to refine a world vein is seriously too slow. Furthermore, the power of a divine king will be exhausted very soon. Looks like I can only take a gamble and try that last method. Ji Tianqing gritted his teeth and finally made up his mind. He put away the divine king light and flew towards the summit of the Golden Mountain. Swoosh! Facing the surging and mighty golden light, withstanding the horrifying power of the world, he landed on the summit of the Golden Mountain. Crack crack crack, his divine light shield was lightly swept by the power of the world, and it fell apart. Immediately after, the white robe and long hair that he was wearing were also blown by a gust of light wind, turning into fine powder. His robust and perfect divine body that was sparkling and translucent like jade immediately appeared. Wisps of power of the world emerged from the Golden Mountain and lightly streaked across his body. Immediately, densely packed wounds were cut all over his body, and golden divine blood seeped out. The divine blood condensed into blood droplets and scattered on the Golden Mountain one after another. Drip, 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 drip. Following a series of light sounds, countless blood droplets drilled into the Golden Mountain. The Golden Mountain that was already resplendent became even more dazzling and eye-catching. The countless droplets of blood also ignited with a pure golden divine fire that spread throughout the Golden Mountain. However, Ji Tianqing did not seem to feel any pain. He sat motionlessly on the golden mountain and closed his eyes to circulate his energy. He was activating the divine king blood, purifying it and dripping it onto the golden mountain. At the same time, he was also using a forbidden divine technique, the blood sacrifice technique. The reason why this technique was called a taboo was because it required a large amount of one's blood and sweat. Under normal circumstances, the blood sacrifice technique would only be used to quickly refine divine artifacts and treasures, or to impart cultivation to others. The consequences of using the blood sacrifice technique were very serious. In less serious cases, they would destroy their own cultivation base, causing their realm to plummet and their divine Tao foundation to be damaged. In serious cases, one's bloodline would be completely lost, and one's divine Tao foundation would collapse. One would be reduced to an ordinary person, or even directly die. Therefore, unless it was absolutely necessary, almost no deity would use this method. But now, Ji Tianqing didn't hesitate to take a risk for the sake of the five elements world star core. Each drop of divine blood contained a powerful sacrificial power. The blood droplets entered the golden mountain and rapidly spread out, corroding one world meridian after another. The world meridian that was soaked in divine blood formed a bloodline connection with Ji Tianqing, and would be controlled by him very quickly. In a short 100 breaths of time, Ji Tianqing had sacrificed several thousand world meridian blood. However, the pain that he endured was also not something that ordinary people could endure. The current him was covered in tiny wounds all over. There was practically no intact flesh to be found. Large amounts of divine blood seeped out, condensing into countless blood droplets, and continuously sprinkled onto the golden mountain. His entire person became a golden blood man. As his blood and sweat rapidly flowed out, his expression became increasingly pale, and his aura also became increasingly weak. His strength was also rapidly declining. Even his divine soul was also rapidly weakening. An hour later, he lost close to half of his divine blood. The remaining 50% of divine king blood in his body was also completely forced out by him, all fusing into the golden mountain. He was already an arrow at the end of its flight. Not only was his condition unbearably weak, his consciousness also became blurry. Not only was his life aura weak, even his strength realm also started to fall. Before long, he fell to the third level of the true God realm. 2 hours later, he fell to the second level of the true God realm. 4 hours later, his realm fell to the first level of the true God realm. The current him had fallen to the state of just breaking through to the true God realm. His tempered divine body was also covered in cracks, as if it would shatter with a touch. Only 30% of his blood remained. His divine power was exhausted, and his flame of life was on the verge of extinguishing. His consciousness also fell into darkness. At the last moment before losing consciousness, he brought out the divine king's light, enveloping himself. Swoosh! A dark golden ball of light appeared, enveloping him, and quietly suspended at the peak of the golden mountain. His consciousness fell into darkness, and he fainted. Fortunately, the divine king's light protected him, not being cut and suppressed by the world power. He was temporarily safe, and his life was not in danger. However, no one knew when he would wake up. The 70% of divine blood he lost had already become over 10,000 blood droplets, all fusing into the golden mountain. The golden blood droplets were spreading from the surface of the golden mountain, spreading down from the peak. Wherever the god's blood passed, the veins of the world would be tainted. Even though Ji Tianqing was unconscious, the 10,000 droplets of divine blood were helping him refine the world meridians, continuously controlling the various regions of the five elements world. Inside the 9 heavens 10 absolutes pagoda, space was distorted. Yunyao ended her secluded cultivation that had lasted for 100 years. She had gained a lot from this secluded cultivation, successfully breaking through to the third level of the true God realm. After ending her cultivation, she found Chen Chen and Yaya, wanting to bring them to see Ji Tianqing. Chen, Yaya, both of you have passed the 9 heavenly tribulations and reached the martial sage realm. Your father will definitely be very happy to hear this news. Yunyao held Chen and Yaya's hands, and a gratified smile appeared on her face. Chen and Yaya had both grown taller, and they looked like 6 or 7-year-old children. Their auras had become more noble, and their appearances had become more outstanding. However, the 3 of them had just flown for a short distance when they met Ji Ku, who was flying towards them. Eldest senior sister, where are you bringing the 2 children? Ji Ku stopped the 3 of them and asked. Not long ago, Chen and Yaya broke through to the martial sage realm at the same time. I'm bringing them to report the good news to Tianqing, Yunyao explained and asked. That's right, Tianqing should be back by now, right? Ji Ku shook his head worriedly. I've just looked for him, but he hasn't returned yet. Yunyao immediately frowned and said worriedly, it's been almost 4 years since he left the Divine Pagoda to explore the Earth's core. Regardless of whether he has gained anything in the Earth's core, he should have returned by now. Ji Ku nodded and said, that's right. I wonder if he has discovered something in the Earth's core. Although he has the Divine King's light and should be safe, I'm still a little worried. Yunyao thought for a while and took out an origin stone jade slip, saying, Cuckoo, don't worry. I'll send a message to Tianqing to ask about the situation. Perhaps a primordial spirit realm cultivator has appeared in the East Pole continent, and he or she has used the Xian Pin Gate to come to the Xinwu continent. Just like the Tian Xian land, elite warriors of the primordial spirit realm can come to this land through the door of Xian Pin. No. Eldest senior sister, it's not like that. Ji Ku hurriedly shook his head and replied with certainty, for the past few years, I've been monitoring Xinwu continent's movements in order to prevent Emperor Heaven Punisher from attacking. When I heard the news, I sent the nearby immortal guards to Surging Waves Forest to investigate the situation. The Immortal Guards reported the results of their investigation and confirmed that there were indeed traces of destruction in Surging Waves Forest. There were ravines that were hundreds of kilometers long, giant pits that were tens of thousands of meters deep, and a fist print that was hundreds of kilometers wide. There was also an area that was 250 kilometers wide that had been turned into ruins. All of the plants and trees had been sucked dry of their vitality and turned into ashes. These traces were not left behind by a primordial spirit realm warrior. Most of the people who entered Xinwu continent from the easternmost continent were at least martial gods. Yunyao's pupils shrank, and her expression turned grave. She asked in a low voice, are you saying that, the intruder might be from the Heaven Punisher clan? Ji Ku nodded. We can't rule out that possibility. If we calculate the time, it's been 8 years since Tianqing escaped from Emperor Heaven Punisher and returned to the 5 Elements realm. Such a long time should be enough for Emperor Heaven Punisher to find the 5 Elements realm. Yunyao thought for a moment and then solemnly said, there's no point in us making wild guesses here. We have to personally make a trip to Surging Waves Forest and investigate before we know the results. I'm very sensitive to the auras of various types of divine power. If those traces were really left behind by the Heaven Punisher, then I'll definitely be able to tell. With that, she left the Divine Pagoda with Ji Ku and rushed towards the Luoshui Divine Kingdom. Meanwhile, in the Henduan mountain range in the southern part of the vast Divine Kingdom, a black warship that was 10,000 meters long and had a strange and sinister appearance was flying through the sky at lightning speed. This warship looked like a ferocious ancient beast. It had a pair of long and sharp wings, and its mouth was wide open, revealing 8 sharp fangs. The warship was covered in divine array runes and engraved with the images and symbols of the Heaven Punisher. It exuded a powerful aura. If Ji Ku Tianqing were here, he would immediately recognize that this was Emperor Heaven Punisher's warship. The Heaven Punisher's warship flew through the sky, crossing mountain ranges and forests as it headed towards the vast Divine Kingdom. Inside the warship, purple light swirled around the cockpit. Imperial Tutor Heaven Punisher stepped on a dense array of divine array runes. His hands shone with purple divine light as he cast a spell to steer the warship. Not far behind him stood a middle-aged man with a height of 10 meters. He looked strong and powerful. This man's body was like a dragon horse, and he had a dragon tail that shone with golden light. He wore the 9 heavens everlasting crimson gold crown on his head, and a wide dark golden cloak was draped over his shoulders. His chiseled face was filled with majesty and coldness. He was Emperor Heaven Punisher. That worm on the fire source planet didn't dare lie. This is indeed the 5 elements world. The entire planet is surrounded by a golden light barrier, and the entire world has been sealed by the divine spirits. Even my warship can't pass through the golden light barrier and enter this world. This is unbelievable. However, the living beings in this world are so weak, and their divine power is so thin. I can't imagine how such a barren and backward world could have produced a realmless divine stone. Emperor Heaven Punisher looked ahead coldly and said expressionlessly. Clearly, before entering the 5 elements world, Emperor Heaven Punisher attacked the nearest planet, the fire source planet. He captured a divine master on the fire source planet and forced him to tell him the location of the 5 elements world. However, the golden light barrier that shrouded the 5 elements world blocked his warship outside. No matter how hard the heaven-punishing divine warship tried, it could not pass through the golden light barrier. With no other choice, Imperial Tutor Heaven Punisher could only fly around the 5 elements world and look for a gap in the golden light barrier. Hard work pays off. Imperial Tutor Heaven Punisher spent 3 months and finally found a crack. When the heaven-punishing divine warship passed through the crack and entered the 5 elements world, it landed on the eastern extreme land. Like the Tian Xian land, the eastern extreme land had hundreds of races and a large population. However, martial arts were not prosperous, and the most powerful warrior only had the strength of the primordial spirit realm. In the eyes of Emperor Heaven Punisher, they were extremely weak ants. Therefore, his impression of the 5 elements world was only barren and backward. Chapter 2632. The great emperor found this hard to believe. How could such a barren world give birth to a divine item like the realmless divine stone? Thus, he captured a few primordial spirit powerhouses from the East Pole continent and interrogated them about the passage to the other continents, the Xian Pin Gate. When the heaven-punishing warship passed through the Xian Pin Gate and entered the Shenwu continent, it landed in the Surging Waves forest. There were many monsters in the forest, as well as some adventurers. However, these monsters and adventurers were as weak as ants in the eyes of the great emperor. In his fury, he controlled the heaven-punishing warship and released several pillars of purple light. Those unlucky demon beasts and adventurers were killed on the spot. Even the Surging Waves forest was left with traces of destruction. There were huge ravines and deep pits, and hundreds of kilometers of land had been reduced to rubble. The imperial tutor understood that the great emperor was in a bad mood, so he tried to console him. "Please calm down, your majesty. The divine power aura on this continent is much denser than on the East Pole continent. Furthermore, the cultivation resources here are much more abundant. I believe that this continent is the best place to cultivate in the 5 elemental realm. Ji Tianqing should be on this continent." The great emperor nodded slightly and said indifferently, "But this continent is very vast. Where should I go to find Ji Tianqing? Don't tell me that this emperor has to search the entire continent. Unfortunately, when I captured Ji Tianqing, I did not expect him to escape, so I did not leave an imprint on him. Otherwise, I would have been able to find him no matter where he hid." Every time he thought about this problem, the great emperor was filled with regret and anger. The imperial tutor thought about it and hurriedly replied, "Don't worry, your majesty. With Ji Tianqing's strength, he must be the protector of this world. We don't have to find him. We have a way to make him come to us." "Oh." The great emperor raised an eyebrow and asked, "What is it?" The imperial tutor revealed a meaningful smile and said confidently, "Massacre." We will create an earth-shattering massacre that will strike fear into the entire continent. The living beings on this continent are as weak as ants to us. His Majesty's worship can push forward and crush all living things." Before he could finish, the great Emperor of Heaven Punishing frowned and shook his head. "That's not a good idea. The Southern Conquering Marshal once led an army to conquer this world. Those lowly creatures will definitely recognize my ship and know that the Heaven Punishers have come. When Ji Tianxing hears the news, he will most likely run away. How would he dare to come to us? He was beaten half to death by this emperor previously. How would he dare to walk right into the trap?" The imperial tutor nodded his head and said, "The emperor is right. If that's the case, please keep your worship. I'll join you in the slaughter. We only need to use a small trick to not reveal any flaws and cause panic on the continent. At that time, Ji Tianxing will personally come to investigate." "Yes, that's a good idea." Emperor Tian Fa nodded and agreed with the plan. The imperial tutor then added, "If Ji Tianxing hides himself or if he's not in the Five Elements world, that's not a big deal. We can investigate the source of the Realmless Divine Stone first. Once we have the Realmless Divine Stone, we can report to our superiors. If Ji Tianxing escapes from the Five Elements world, we will conquer this world and make sure he never dares to come back. After all, we have the upper hand. He only has two choices. He can either be executed or run away." The great Emperor of Heaven Punishing nodded his head again and agreed with the imperial tutor's suggestion. Then, the great Emperor of Heaven Punishing put away his worship. He and the imperial tutor used a divine spell to hide their true appearances. They turned into two tall and muscular martial artists of the alien tribe and flew high in the sky. Half a day later, the great Emperor of Heaven Punishing and the imperial tutor flew to the sky above a city. This ancient city had a history of more than 2,000 years. It was located in the middle of mountains and rivers. The scenery was very elegant. The city covered an area of 200 miles. There were rows upon rows of palaces and pavilions. There were crisscrossing streets and alleys. There were also more than 1 million martial artists and civilians. It was early in the morning. The city was bustling with activity. There was an endless stream of people and carriages. The great Emperor of Heaven Punishing and the imperial tutor stood in the sky and looked down at the city. The imperial tutor smiled and said, "Your Majesty, please take a look. The cities on this continent are obviously more prosperous than those on the East Pole continent. The martial artists are also more powerful." Before the imperial tutor could finish speaking, the great Emperor of Heaven Punishing said with contempt, "No matter how prosperous they are still a bunch of ants." As soon as he finished speaking, he waved his hand and shot out a ball of purple divine light. Swoosh! The purple divine light turned into a divine flame that covered the sky. It surged like a huge wave and poured down on the city below. Boom! In the next moment, the entire city was engulfed by the purple divine flame. Countless civilians and martial practitioners in the city were burned to ashes the moment they came into contact with the purple divine fire. They didn't even have time to struggle or scream. The palaces and pavilions in the city collapsed in the divine flame and turned into black dust. The city walls and buildings collapsed. The ground cracked and caved in. Countless living beings were burned to ashes by the surging divine flame. Not a single building was spared. Not a single person was spared. After a short while, the surging divine flame was gradually extinguished. The previously prosperous and affluent city had already disappeared. There was only a deep pit with a radius of 200 miles. It was filled with brick ruins and pitch-black scorched earth. A majestic city with more than 1 million civilians could not withstand a casual palm strike from the great Emperor of Heaven Punishing. Ordinary martial artists and civilians were so weak in front of a true god expert. The great Emperor of Heaven Punishing did not bother to look at the ruins. He turned and flew away with the imperial tutor. 6 hours later. The great Emperor of Heaven Punishing and the imperial tutor came across another city. This city was located on a vast plain. There were more than a dozen villages and towns within a radius of 1,000 miles. Tall and majestic city walls surrounded an area with a radius of 300 miles. Countless houses, palaces, and tall buildings had been built in the city. More than 2 million civilians lived there. This majestic city was the core area of the surrounding 10,000 miles. It was very prosperous. However, when the great Emperor of Heaven Punishing arrived, disaster befell this city. The surging purple divine flame covered the sky within a radius of 1,000 miles. The majestic city and the surrounding villages and towns were all enveloped by the terrifying purple divine flame. The invisible divine power of heaven and earth sealed the area within a radius of 1,000 miles. Even though more than 2 million civilians sensed that something was wrong and sensed that death was imminent, they could not escape. Boom! 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 Under the despairing gazes of countless people, the divine flame that covered the sky poured down and swallowed everything. The area within a radius of 1,000 miles turned into a sea of purple fire. The city was as cruel as purgatory. Houses and buildings collapsed. Tens of thousands of martial artists and civilians screamed and struggled in the surging flames. Soon, they were burned to ashes. Such a disaster was like the end of the world. Even the most powerful tribulation realm martial artist in the city could not withstand the divine flame. He was burned to ashes in an instant. Chapter 26:33. 15 minutes later. The grasslands and land within a 1,000-kilometer radius had been reduced to pitch-black scorched earth. Cities and dozens of villages and towns had been reduced to ruins. Nearly 3 million civilians and martial artists, regardless of their strength, had been reduced to ashes. This was truly a scene of a 1,000-kilometer radius of barren land, with not even a single corpse remaining. Even when the heaven-conquering army had invaded and plunged the divine kingdom into misery and suffering, such a tragic scene had never occurred. If it was anyone else who saw such a miserable scene, they would not be able to bear it and would feel pity for them. However, the heaven-conquering emperor's expression and gaze remained as cold as ice, without a hint of emotion. He didn't even bother to look at the scene and left after using a divine technique. Following that, he led the imperial tutor around the divine kingdom, searching for cities and martial artists to gather. Regardless of whether it was a prosperous city or a popular martial arts faction or sect. Whenever the heaven-conquering emperor saw them, he would slap them with his palm or punch them. There was no doubt about the results. Those cities, martial Dao sects, and forces were instantly destroyed into ruins without any warning. Everything within a 100-kilometer radius had been reduced to scorched earth and ruins, and all living things had been reduced to ashes. As time passed, the heaven-conquering emperor destroyed more and more cities and factions. News of this quickly spread throughout the divine kingdom of Taihao, causing hundreds of millions of citizens to panic and unease. Early one morning. High up in the sky, in the divine palace of Taihao. Taihao Yunqi, who was dressed in golden divine robes and wearing an imperial golden crown, was sitting in his study, focused on handling government affairs. Ever since martial god Taihao had fallen and the heaven-conquering army had been defeated, he had inherited the position of divine master at the behest of Ji Tianqing. He knew that he was only a martial sage and had yet to become a martial god. Holding the position of divine master would inevitably attract criticism from his subjects and make it difficult to convince them. Thus, he had been treading on thin ice during his years as divine master of Taihao. He had always been conscientious and conscientious. For the sake of the citizens and government affairs of the divine kingdom, he had worked hard and spared no effort. Fortunately, the Shenwu continent had always been peaceful under the protection of Ji Tianqing and his wife. The divine kingdom of Taihao was also peaceful, and there had not been any major disturbances. Under Taihao Yunqi's efforts, the divine kingdom quickly regained its peace. Over the years, the situation in the divine nation had been stabilized. The people were living and working in peace. Even the martial arts among the people began to flourish, showing a flourishing state. Everything was progressing in a good direction. Taihao Yunqi was deeply gratified. He felt that he had not let down Father God and Ji Tianqing. He was planning in his heart. Now that the divine kingdom had stabilized, he would go into seclusion to cultivate for a few years after he finished dealing with important government affairs. All these years, he had been so busy with government affairs that he had neglected his cultivation. He was about to be overtaken by the other divine children. I have to work harder and try to break through to the martial god realm as soon as possible. Only then will I be able to intimidate the people of the divine nation and truly sit on the throne of the divine master. Taihao Yunqi put away a memorial and murmured expectantly. At this moment, an urgent report came from outside the study. Reporting. Urgent report. Taihao Yunqi immediately frowned and looked at the door. He saw a messenger in armor hurriedly crossing the door and rushing into the study. The messenger rushed to his desk and knelt down to salute. He quickly reported, "Divine Master, something bad has happened. More than 20 disasters have occurred in the Deqian Empire in the south of the divine nation. More than 20 cities have been destroyed, and more than 30 million people have died." What? Taihao Yunqi's expression changed drastically when he heard this bad news. He stood up immediately. What kind of disaster can destroy more than 20 cities and cause more than 30 million people to die? What the hell happened? Tell me. Taihao Yunqi was shocked and angry. An invisible pressure burst out from his body and spread throughout the study. The messenger prostrated himself on the ground and said with an ashen face, "Divine Master, according to the news from the Deqian Empire, the disaster began 3 days ago. It spread from the south of the Deqian Empire to the north. One city after another was destroyed by the terrifying fire. Not only were the cities turned into ashes, but the people in the cities were also killed. In addition to more than 20 cities, a few other martial arts sects and factions also suffered the same tragedy. According to the Deqian Holy Emperor, it is not a natural disaster. It is most likely the work of a mysterious elite." After he finished speaking, the messenger took out a memorial and presented it to Taihao Yunqi. Taihao Yunqi's expression was grave. He quickly took the memorial and flipped through it. The memorial recorded the number of cities and martial arts sects that were destroyed. Not only did it record the number of deaths, it also described the aftermath of the disaster in detail. After Taihao Yunqi finished reading, he frowned and pondered for 10 breaths. This is not a natural disaster, but a man-made disaster. Someone deliberately massacred and wanted to destroy the stability of the divine nation. However, the ruins and traces left behind by the perpetrator are too shocking. All the cities were destroyed in an instant and almost no one was able to escape. From this, it can be seen that the perpetrator is very powerful and has definitely surpassed the martial saint realm. It is most likely the work of a martial god. Although he had encountered such a major incident, Taihao Yunqi was still able to maintain his calm. He was able to deduce so much information just from the memorial. The messenger looked up at him and asked, "Lord God, how do you plan to deal with this? Why don't I send the Divine Guard Legion to the Deqian Empire to investigate and capture the perpetrator?" Taihao Yunqi immediately shook his head and said in a low voice, "The perpetrator is very powerful and cruel. It is very likely that he is a martial god. Even if we send the Divine Guard Legion to investigate, it will be difficult to do anything. I will first send a message to Lord Tianqing and report this matter to him. There are only a few martial gods on the Xinwu continent, and Lord Tianqing should be aware of this." After he finished speaking, Taihao Yunqi hastily took out a communication jade slip and sent a message to Ji Tianqing. While waiting for Ji Tianqing's reply, Taihao Yunqi also ordered the commander of the Divine Guard Legion to lead 100 elite powerhouses to investigate the situation in the Deqian Empire. In order to capture the perpetrator, the most important thing was quality, not quantity. After 2 hours, Taihao Yinchi still did not receive Ji Tianqing's reply. He was anxious and took out 2 more transmission jade slips and sent them to Yunyao and Ji Ku. In his opinion, Ji Tianqing was most likely cultivating in seclusion and would not receive any messages for the time being. However, the 3 of them would not be in seclusion at the same time, so one of them must be managing the affairs of the Divine Kingdom. As expected. After a short while, Taihao Yunqi received a message from Yunyao. 7th Godchild, we are currently in Surging Waves Forest, searching for the whereabouts of the mysterious powerhouse. Since such a tragedy has occurred in the Deqian Empire, it is very likely the work of that mysterious powerhouse. According to our guess, that mysterious powerhouse is very likely the Emperor of the Heaven Punisher clan. Chapter 2634. Great Emperor Heaven Punisher. Taihao Yunqi held the jade slip in his hand, and his expression immediately changed. His gaze was extremely solemn. This news was like a bolt from the blue to him. Back then, the dragon-subduing general had wreaked havoc on Shenwu continent, causing blood to rain everywhere. After the Southern Expedition Marshal had arrived, he had swept through the entire continent and almost destroyed the 3 divine kingdoms. In the end, many martial gods had joined forces to defeat the great Emperor Heaven Punisher and chase the Southern Expedition Marshal away. However, Martial God Taihao, the emissary of the Divine Ruins, and Fairy Yuqing had all fallen in the great battle. The damage that the great battle had inflicted on Shenwu continent had yet to heal. One could only imagine what kind of shocking waves the great Emperor Heaven Punisher would cause if he personally came to Shenwu continent. Taihao Yunqi had never heard of the great Emperor Heaven Punisher, nor did he know what kind of powerhouse he was. However, he was certain that the great Emperor Heaven Punisher's strength surpassed the Southern Expedition Marshals. According to Divine Lord Tianqing, the Southern Expedition Marshal is a true god powerhouse. The great Emperor Heaven Punisher must be an even stronger true god. This time, it's not just the Taihao Divine Kingdom, I'm afraid that the entire Shenwu continent will be destroyed, right? Taihao Yunqi muttered to himself as he silently put the jade slip away. After a while, his expression and eyes regained their calm, and he shouted in a dignified tone, "Messenger, order the Vice Commander of the Divine Guards to lead 2,000 elites and follow me to the Deqian Empire." The messenger guarding outside the study immediately rushed in and anxiously tried to dissuade him. "Divine Lord, you must not do this. You are the ruler of a divine kingdom and the leader of millions of people. How can you put yourself in danger?" Without waiting for the messenger to finish speaking, Taihao Yunqi's tone was firm as he resolutely said, "There's no need to say anything more. I've already made up my mind. The emperor guards the kingdom, and the king dies for the kingdom. If the great storm comes, if the Taihao Divine Kingdom is destroyed, I will face it with the kingdom." Taihao Yunqi's tone was solemn and forceful, and it was filled with an indomitable will that did not fear death. The messenger was also intimidated, and he froze in place for a while. It took him a while to regain his composure and quickly bowed before he left to pass down the order. As soon as the messenger left, a girl in a green robe and a pair of small feet walked into the study. The girl was sitting on a half-moon-shaped throne. She was only 4 feet tall and had a small face that looked like it was carved from jade. She was especially cute. After entering the study, the first thing she said was, "Seventh brother, I want to go with you." When Taihao Yunqi saw her, he felt a headache coming on. "Jiu, why did you come here instead of staying in your bedroom?" Without a doubt, that noble and adorable little girl was Jiu. She looked at Taihao Yunqi with a determined gaze and said in a serious tone, "Seventh brother, you don't have to hide it from me. I've already received the news. This is no small matter. I want to go with you." "Nonsense." Taihao Yunqi purposely pulled a long face and scolded sternly, "Why don't you stay in your palace and cultivate in seclusion? What are you doing here?" "I'm going to the Big Dry Empire to investigate the situation, I'll be back in a few days. Stay in the Divine Palace and don't go anywhere." This is an order. Jiu pouted and said stubbornly, "Seventh brother, don't try to lie to me. I know that the person who massacred the citizens of the Big Dry Empire must be a martial god expert. You're the lord of the divine kingdom and you're going to investigate personally. Why can't I go? I don't care. I have to go with you on such a dangerous matter." Taihao Yunqi couldn't bear it and used both hard and soft methods to persuade Jiu to stay in the divine palace. But Jiu had made up her mind and wouldn't listen to him. Helpless, Taihao Yunqi could only bring Jiu and rushed to the Big Dry Empire under the escort of the Divine Guard Vice Commander and 2,000 elites. At the same time, inside the Big Dry Empire, in the southeastern Fire Mulberry City. This ancient city with 3,000 years of history was located on a 500-mile plain. The city was surrounded by mountains and the lush mountain range was filled with fiery red fire mulberry trees. In the past 10 years, the Fire Mulberry City had been peaceful. The citizens lived and worked in peace and contentment. The martial Dao also began to recover and flourish. However, the peace that lasted for 10 years was broken by a piece of news that came 3 days ago. In the southern region of the Big Dry Empire, more than 20 disasters occurred. More than 20 cities were destroyed one after another. More than 30 million citizens died. Almost no one survived. Moreover, the spread of the disasters seemed to be approaching the Fire Mulberry City. Such terrifying news cast an invisible shadow over the Fire Mulberry City. Over the past 3 days, the people in the city were in a state of panic. Countless martial artists and citizens dragged their families and fled the city at night. In the beginning, many people were still hoping for a fluke. However, as the atmosphere of panic spread, more and more people left their homes and fled. It was already evening. The blood-red sun hung in the sky and was about to fall. However, at the north and south gates of the Fire Mulberry City, there were still a large number of martial artists and citizens lining up to leave the city. No one knew that 2 tall and burly figures were standing in the sky above the Fire Mulberry City. These 2 foreign race martial artists in golden armor were the great Emperor of Heaven Punisher and the Imperial Tutor in disguise. The Imperial Tutor looked at the chaotic Fire Mulberry City and sneered. "Hee, our massacre has already taken effect. Panic is spreading. Soon, this continent will descend into chaos." The great Emperor of Heaven Punisher looked down at the city expressionlessly and said indifferently, "What's the point of these ignorant ants running away now? The entire mainland will fall under this emperor's feet. No matter where they run, only death awaits them." The Imperial Tutor hurriedly nodded in agreement and smiled. "That's right. It's not just the Shenwu continent. The entire 5 Elements realm is your territory. All living beings in this world will become the great Emperor's slaves." The great Emperor of Heaven Punisher glanced at the city's citizens and said disdainfully, "Such weak ants don't even have the right to be my slaves." As soon as he finished speaking, he waved his hand and unleashed a purple divine flame that covered the sky. Whoosh! The surging purple divine flame instantly enveloped the sky for hundreds of kilometers, blocking out the blood-red sun. The entire Fire Mulberry City turned a dark purple, and a terrifyingly high temperature filled the air. The noisy city immediately quieted down. Hundreds of thousands of citizens' expressions changed as they looked up at the sky. The next moment, the crowd saw the purple divine flame cover the sky and pour down like a flood. Boom! The city immediately turned into a sea of fire that was drowned by endless divine flames. Many warriors and commoners were burned to ashes before they could regain their senses. Regardless of whether they were in the city or those who had fled outside, they were all buried in the sea of fire and turned to ash. A moment later, the entire city had been reduced to scorched earth, and not a single intact building remained. The great Emperor of Heaven Punisher did not want to waste any more time, so he flew away with the Imperial Tutor. But at this moment, a thunderous roar came from behind the 2 of them. "You 2 despicable beasts, don't even think about escaping." Chapter 26:35. A sudden roar reverberated in the sky. The great Emperor Tian Fa and the imperial tutor, who were about to leave, immediately stopped. The two of them turned around and saw a dazzling beam of green light shooting toward them like a bolt of lightning. In the sky behind the cyan light, there were thousands of demon beasts and birds, carrying tens of thousands of armored human warriors. Seeing this, great Emperor Tian Fa and Emperor's preceptor exchanged glances with each other. Their lips curled into a mocking smile. Swoosh! After a few breaths, the beam of green light flew closer and stopped above the ruins of Wuxia City. The green light receded, revealing a burly man in golden armor and a purple cloak. This man was tall and strong and had a resolute face. He wore a crown on his head and exuded a majestic aura. He was the ruler of the Great Qian Empire, the sacred emperor of the Great Qian Empire. The 4,000 beasts and birds carried 4,600 primordial soul realm martial artists in black armor. They were the imperial guards of the Great Qian Empire. Swoosh! 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 Soon, the 4,000 birds arrived behind the sacred emperor of the Great Qian Empire. They spread out and formed a huge circle with a radius of 100 miles, surrounding Great Emperor Fa Tian and the imperial preceptor. All the black-armored imperial guards held swords and spears and pointed their gleaming blades at the two of them. Despite being surrounded, the Great Emperor Tian Fa and the imperial tutor did not change their expressions. The two of them even sized up the sacred emperor of the Great Qian Empire with a playful smile and ignored the 4,000 imperial guards. The sacred emperor of the Great Qian Empire looked down at the ruins of Wuxia City and was instantly enraged. He roared furiously, "You two cruel bastards! How dare you start a massacre in the territory of the Great Qian Empire and slaughter my people? I personally led the imperial guards and searched for you for 5 days and 5 nights. I finally caught you. Don't try to resist. I will capture you and behead you in public." His voice echoed in the sky and the sacred emperor of the Great Qian dynasty was filled with grief and indignation. His aura was majestic and domineering. The Emperor of Heaven Punisher did not understand what he was talking about. He asked the imperial tutor next to him, "Imperial tutor, you've captured dozens of people and extracted the memories of more than 60 people. You should have mastered the human language, right?" The imperial tutor smiled and nodded. "Not only that, but I've also gained a basic understanding of the situation on Shenwu continent." The heaven-punishing emperor nodded slightly and asked, "Who's that guy? What did he just say?" The imperial tutor couldn't help but chuckle as he explained, "The ants we've been killing over the past few days are all citizens of the Qian Empire. That fellow is the Big Dry Empire's Saint Emperor and has been looking for us for several days. He told us not to resist. He wanted to capture us and execute us." Ha ha ha. The imperial tutor couldn't help but laugh. The great Emperor of Heaven Extermination could not bring himself to smile. He said angrily, "We've killed more than 30 million ants and created such a great panic. They've only sent a martial saint. Preposterous. This is the greatest humiliation to me. This is unforgivable." The imperial tutor quickly stopped laughing and cupped his hands respectfully. "Your Majesty, please calm down. Let me deal with these ants." He then took a few steps forward and looked at the Great Dry Empire's Saint Emperor with disdain. He sneered, "Little guy, you're just a puny martial saint, yet you dare to stop us. You're like an ant trying to shake a tree, a mantis trying to stop a chariot. I don't want to kill you. Quickly report this to Ji Tianqing and have him come here to accept his death." The imperial tutor was speaking the human language. Although it was a little awkward, the Great Dry Empire's Saint Emperor could hear him clearly. He was so angry that he started laughing. He pointed his sword at the imperial tutor and sneered, "A puny martial saint. Ha ha ha. You foreign beast, you're really arrogant. Do you think the two of you are worthy of Divine Master Tianqing taking action?" Why don't you look in the mirror and see if you're qualified? The Great Dry Empire's Saint Emperor was a citizen of the vast divine nation. However, in his heart, Ji Tianqing's position was sacred and could not be blasphemed. The imperial tutor was not angry. He sneered and said, "Ha ha ha. The ignorant are really fearless. Even if Ji Tianqing was here, he wouldn't dare to speak so arrogantly. All right, I don't have time to talk to you. Since you've chosen to die, I'll fulfill your wish." The imperial tutor formed a seal with his hands and a purple light shot up into the sky. Swoosh! A dazzling purple halo shot out from his body and spread in all directions. Buzz! That purple halo contained a powerful divine power, and it instantly spread across a radius of 200 miles, sweeping across the sky. More than 4,000 demonic beasts, birds, and 4,600 imperial guards were all swept up by the purple halo. Bam! 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 In the next moment, all the demonic beasts, birds, and imperial guards exploded into a rain of blood with a series of muffled sounds. Blood and pieces of corpses poured down from the sky and scattered in the ruins below. In the blink of an eye, the sky became empty. Apart from the great Emperor of Heaven Slayer and the imperial tutor, only the Great Dry Empire's Saint Emperor was left. Such a strange and terrifying scene instantly made the Great Dry Empire's Saint Emperor's body shake violently and his eyes widened in shock. In the depths of his eyes, there was deep shock and fear. If he had not seen it with his own eyes, he would not have believed that it was real. There's such a terrifying expert in the world. Who is he? His strength, has he already reached the martial god realm? The Great Dry Empire's Saint Emperor's body trembled as these thoughts flashed across his mind and he felt a chill down his spine. He finally understood how powerful the two alien races he was facing were. I'm dead. The Great Dry Empire's Saint Emperor felt a chill down his spine and that was the only thought left in his mind. At this moment, the imperial tutor looked at him with a cold smile and said again, "Young man, I'll say it one last time. Immediately send a message to Ji Tianqing and ask him to come and accept his death. Otherwise, you know the consequences." The eerie voice contained a terrifying deterrent force and it lingered in the ears of the Great Dry Empire's Saint Emperor. The Great Dry Empire's Saint Emperor's face turned pale and cold sweat broke out on his forehead. He felt his throat tighten and said with a dry voice, "But I can't contact Master God Tianqing at all. Given my identity and status, I don't have the right to contact him." Hearing these words, the sneer on the imperial preceptor's face disappeared, revealing a look of disappointment. "In that case, there's no need for you to exist," the imperial preceptor said in an indifferent tone. He flicked out a ray of purple divine light with his finger. Swoosh! In just an instant, the purple divine light flashed across the sky like lightning and pierced the Great Dry Empire's Saint Emperor's chest. The Great Dry Empire did not have time to dodge or react. Bam! As a muffled sound was heard, the purple divine light exploded in his body and turned into purple flames that soared into the sky. His tall and sturdy body was also blasted into pieces, causing a rain of blood to splatter all over the sky. A martial saint had been instantly killed by imperial tutor Fa Tian with a single finger. Chapter 2636. Sigh, what a disappointment. The imperial tutor sighed when the great Qian emperor's flesh and blood fell on the ruins. He shook his head and returned to the great Emperor of Heaven Punisher's side. The great Emperor of Heaven Punisher asked expressionlessly, "How was it?" The imperial tutor shook his head and said dejectedly, "This guy is a citizen of the vast divine kingdom. He is not Ji Tianqing's subordinate. Also, his status is too low. He has no right to contact Ji Tianqing." The great Emperor of Heaven Punisher said without hesitation, "In that case, let's go to Ji Tianqing's divine kingdom and force him to show himself." The imperial tutor thought for a while and shook his head again. Ji Tianqing's territory is the Tianqing's divine kingdom. It is very far from here. Also, Ji Tianqing is only the divine lord in name. He has not been involved in political affairs for many years and has not shown himself. We have already created chaos and panic here. The news will soon reach Ji Tianqing. He should be here soon. The great Emperor of Heaven Punisher did not say anything else. He said in a low voice, "Then let's continue the massacre." "Yes, Your Majesty." The imperial tutor cupped his hands and bowed. Then the two turned and flew away. They continued to advance toward the north. However, the two had only flown 1,000 li away when they were stopped by a huge group of cultivators. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. It was a team shining with golden light. They streaked across the sky like lightning and stopped in front of the two. There were more than 2,000 martial artists. They were all riding on disc-shaped flying Dharma treasures. They wore silver armor and had swords and sabers hanging from their waists. Most of the silver-armored guards were at the second or third level of the tribulation realm. The two people in the lead were a young man in a golden robe and a divine crown. The other was a petite and cute girl. The young man in the golden robe was very dignified. The cute girl was 4 feet tall. She had a head of golden hair and a pair of big eyes. She was unforgettable. The great Emperor of Heaven Punisher glanced at them and said expressionlessly, "Another bunch of ants who don't know what's good for them." The imperial tutor smiled and said, "Your Majesty, please be patient and allow me to deal with them." After he finished speaking, he took a few steps forward and looked at the young man in gold with disdain. He said, "Little guy, tell me your name. Let's see if you have the right to speak to me." The imperial tutor could tell that the golden-robed young man and the little girl were both martial sages. If the other party's identity was the same as the sacred emperor of the great Qian dynasty, he wouldn't waste his breath and would just kill him. The golden-robed young man and little girl were none other than Taihao Yinqi and Jiujiu. At this moment, both of them were frowning as they sized up the Emperor of Heaven Punisher and the imperial tutor. Strange. Divine Lord Yunyao told me that the intruder might be the great Emperor of Heaven Punisher. Those two are clearly foreign race experts. They have nothing to do with the heaven punishing race. Taihao Yinqi muttered in his heart. However, he did not let his guard down. Regardless of whether the intruder was from the heaven punisher race or not, they were not to be trifled with. Jiujiu did not know the crux of the problem. She stared sharply at the imperial tutor and shouted angrily, "Who are you? Why did you barge into the vast divine kingdom? Did you have something to do with the battle that happened in Huasang City?" The imperial tutor glanced at her and nodded with a playful smile. "That's right. Huasang City has been reduced to ruins. We did it. Not only did we destroy Huasang City, but we also destroyed dozens of cities along the way. Little girl, you are unlucky to have met us today. If you answer my questions honestly, you can still have a quick death. Otherwise, I will make you suffer so much that you will regret ever being born." When Taihao Yinqi and Jiujiu heard this, their faces changed and killing intent surged in their eyes. "You are the culprits who massacred 30 million people. Damn you, foreign race bastards. The vast divine kingdom has no enmity with you. Why are you so ruthless?" The imperial tutor frowned in displeasure. He flicked his finger and 2 rays of purple divine light shot out. Swoosh! Swoosh! The divine light was like a sword and instantly pierced through the left arms of Taihao Yinqi and Jiujiu. With a boom, the left arms of the two exploded at the same time and turned into a bloody mist that drifted into the sky. The intense pain caused the two to groan at the same time. Both brother and sister were overwhelmed with shock and anger. They could not believe that the intruder had easily destroyed their left arms with a flick of his finger. With their martial sage realm strength, they were unable to dodge or defend themselves. The intruder's strength must have reached the martial god realm. The imperial tutor sneered. You two brats, you have not answered my question. If you delay any longer, I will lose my patience. You are courting death. Jiu was furious. She instinctively drew her sword and was about to attack. Jiu, no. Taihao Yinchi could still maintain his calm and quickly stopped her. He endured the pain of losing his left arm and looked at the imperial tutor with a dark face. I am the king of the vast divine kingdom. She is my little sister. Who are you? Why did you kill my people? The imperial tutor smiled in satisfaction after hearing Taihao Yinchi's answer. The king of the vast divine kingdom? Very good. You came at the right time, ha ha ha. After laughing, the imperial tutor said in a pleasant tone, although you are as weak as an ant, you are the king of the vast divine kingdom. You should know Ji Tianqing. I will give you a chance to live. Send a message to Ji Tianqing now and beg him to save you. I will spare your lives. Taihao Yinchi and Jiu were stunned when they heard this. Send a message to Divine Lord Tianqing. Are you here for Tianqing? Who are you? Why do you want to find Ji Tianqing? The imperial tutor said without changing his expression, you ask too many questions. Your lives are in my hands now. You have no other choice. Send a message to Ji Tianqing and ask him to come, or die. As he spoke, the imperial tutor formed a seal with his hands and released 2 rings of dazzling purple divine light. Buzz! The purple divine light spread out like ripples and covered a radius of a few hundred miles. The 2,000 divine guards in silver armor and armed with sabers and swords were hit by the purple divine light before they could react. Bam! 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 A series of muffled sounds echoed in the sky. The 2,000 elite divine guards exploded into a bloody mist in an instant. Not even their bones were left. A rain of blood mixed with the remains of the corpses fell from the sky like a bloody rainstorm. In the blink of an eye, only the great Emperor of Heaven Punisher, the imperial tutor, Taihao Yinchi, and Jiu were left in the sky. This scene made Taihao Yinchi and Jiu tremble violently. Their eyes widened in shock. They were incomparably terrified and furious. At the same time, a strong sense of powerlessness arose in their hearts. The strength of the imperial preceptor was terrifyingly powerful to an unfathomable extent, causing them to completely lose the thought of resisting. Under the suppression of the imperial tutor, his body gradually bent and his knees bent. Then, he knelt down. Seeing this, Jiu was so angry that her eyes almost popped out of their sockets. Bastard! Let go of my 7th brother. She let out a furious roar as she brandished her sword and slashed out dozens of sword lights, charging towards the imperial preceptor without any regard for her own safety. However, the imperial tutor did not even bother to attack. He suddenly turned his head and looked at Jiu with a sharp gaze. He released a formless pressure of divine power. Crack! Crack! The dozens of 5-colored sword radiances were instantly shattered and scattered in the sky. Jiu was also engulfed by the suppression. Her face turned as pale as a sheet of paper. She spat out a mouthful of blood and flew back in a daze. The imperial tutor did not kill her directly. He purposely spared her life. After plundering Taihao Yinchi's soul and memories, he would slowly interrogate Jiu. Swoosh! The imperial tutor reached out his right hand and unleashed a giant purple claw toward the unconscious Taihao Yinchi. The giant purple claw descended from the sky and was about to grab Taihao Yinchi. At this critical moment, a dazzling crimson spear shadow suddenly attacked from the horizon. What followed was a clear and melodious cry. Damn you, heavenly dog! Die! Bam! The red spear shadow that was hundreds of feet long hit the giant purple claw with the red divine fire that could burn everything. There was an earth-shattering explosion. The violent impact sent the imperial tutor flying 100 feet away. He retreated behind the great Emperor of Heaven Punisher. His expression changed drastically as he looked behind him coldly. He saw an icy blue and a crimson-red flowing light, which was as fast as the aurora, rushing towards him. Swoosh! Swoosh! In the blink of an eye, the two streaks of light flew to Taihao Yinqi's side and stopped. After the light faded, two beautiful figures appeared. They were two young women with peerless beauty and peerless elegance. One of them was wearing a long white dress. She was as beautiful as a fairy and had a noble and elegant aura. She held two pitch-black divine swords in her hands. The other one was wearing a long red dress. She had a perfect figure and a hot aura. She held a black divine spear that was more than 10 feet long. There was no doubt that they were Yun Yao and Ji Ku. Martial Emperor Tian Jia and the Emperor's preceptor looked at the two of them in astonishment. Of course, what surprised them was not Yun Yao and Ji Ku's unparalleled beauty. Instead, they were both at LV3 true immortal realm. The divine weapons in their hands were also made of boundless divine stone. The great Emperor of Heaven Punisher and the Imperial Tutor looked at each other and smiled at the same time. The main characters are here. The great Emperor of Heaven Punisher and the Imperial Tutor could guess that the boundless divine stone was the reason why 3 true immortal realm experts had appeared in this small world of 5 elements. The two beautiful young women must have a close relationship with Ji Tianqing. As long as they could capture the two of them, they could force Ji Tianqing to show himself. They could even interrogate the whereabouts of the boundless divine stone. At that thought, the great Emperor of Heaven Punisher and the Imperial Tutor were filled with anticipation. They smiled proudly. As for Taihao Yinqi and Jiujiu, they were just small fries. They were no longer important. At that moment, Yun Yao waved her hand and shot out a gentle silver light into Taihao Yinqi's body. Taihao Yinqi coughed violently and spat out a few mouthfuls of blood. Then, he regained consciousness. When he looked up and saw Yun Yao and Ji Ku, his face was filled with anxiety. He said anxiously, "Two divine masters, you must be careful. Those two are true immortal realm experts. They are from the Heaven Punisher tribe and they are here for Divine Master Tianqing." At such a critical moment, Taihao Yinqi was not worried about his own situation. Instead, he was worried about Ji Tianqing. This made Yun Yao's heart feel warm. She nodded and said, "Seventh Divine Son, you don't have to say anything. We already know. Let us deal with those two bastards from the Heaven Punisher tribe. You and Jiujiu should leave this place quickly." To protect Taihao Yinqi and Jiujiu's dignity, Yun Yao did not say anything. Taihao Yinqi and Jiujiu both knew that they were too weak to participate in this battle. Chapter 2638. Taihao Yinqi and Jiujiu would not be of any use if they stayed behind. Instead, they would only cause trouble for Yun Yao and Ji Ku. Seeing that a great battle was about to break out, the siblings hurriedly retreated into the distance. Before they left, they did not forget to warn Yun Yao and Ji Ku. "Divine Lord Yun Yao, you must be careful. Don't fight them head-on. If you really can't do it, then try to stall them. When Divine Lord Tianqing arrives, he will definitely be able to defeat them." The siblings were not clear about Yun Yao and Ji Ku's cultivation realms. They only knew that Ji Tianqing was the strongest and had never been defeated before. As they retreated, Yun Yao did not forget to send a message to her brother. "Seventh Godchild, immediately issue an order for the citizens of the surrounding cities to evacuate to avoid unnecessary casualties. We will try to stall them and try our best to lure them away." Besides that, Yun Yao did not say anything else, nor did she mention Ji Tianqing. Taihao Yinqi was a meticulous person, and he immediately understood what Yun Yao meant and guessed the crux of the problem. Divine Lord Yun Yao wants me to issue an order for the citizens of the surrounding cities to evacuate? Could it be that Divine Lord Yun Yao already knew the outcome of the battle before it even began? That the two of them would not be able to defeat Great Emperor Heaven Punisher? Furthermore, she did not mention Divine Lord Tianqing at all. Why hasn't Divine Lord Tianqing appeared? Is he not in Shenwu continent? Taihao Yinchi frowned at this thought, and his expression became solemn. He had a premonition that an even more terrifying disaster was about to befall the vast divine kingdom. However, he was not strong enough to stop all of this. All he could do was quickly flee with Jiujiu. After that, he would issue an order for the citizens of the surrounding cities to evacuate as quickly as possible. When they saw Taihao Yinchi and Jiujiu flee, Great Emperor Heaven Punisher and the Imperial Tutor did not try to stop them. The Imperial Tutor sneered as he looked at Yun Yao and Ji Ku. The unimportant people have already left. Now, it's time for you to answer my questions. What is your relationship with Ji Tianqing? Where is Ji Tianqing? Yun Yao pointed her twin swords at the Imperial Preceptor and shouted coldly with disdain, a coward who hides his head but shows his tail. He doesn't even dare to show his true face. What qualifications do you have to ask me? If I'm not mistaken, you're just a lackey of Great Emperor Tian Fa. As she spoke, she slowly moved her swords and pointed them at Great Emperor Tian Fa. She sneered, "You are the real Great Emperor Tian Fa." Even though Great Emperor Tian Fa and Emperor's Preceptor had disguised themselves as alien races, they could not escape Yun Yao's detection. She could sense that the Imperial Preceptor's aura was slightly weaker than the Great Emperor Tian Fa's. Moreover, Great Emperor Heaven Punisher's aura was extraordinary. He looked on expressionlessly. It was obvious that he was the leader. Under normal circumstances, those who challenged Great Emperor Heaven Punisher were his lackeys. Yun Yao's guess was right. The Imperial Preceptor furrowed his brows, and a cold light flashed in his eyes. Great Emperor Heaven Punisher did not remain silent. He walked up to the Imperial Tutor and stood still. Purple light flashed from his body, and he revealed his true form. Swoosh! A 3-foot-tall man with the upper body of a human and the lower body of a dragon horse appeared in the sky. He wore the 9 heavens limitless crimson gold crown on his head and a large golden cloak draped over his shoulders. His long purple hair fluttered in the wind. Although he was only standing in the sky and did not do anything, his aura was powerful. However, a majestic and mighty aura that could suppress the heavens and the earth naturally emanated from his body. Lowly human, you're very smart. That's right. I'm Great Emperor Heaven Punisher. Emperor Tian Fa stared at Yun Yao sternly and shouted in a booming voice, "Since you know who I am, you should know that my methods are not something you can handle. Don't make any more pointless resistance. Tell Ji Tianqing to come out. My target is him. If you don't want to die, send him a message." Since Great Emperor Heaven Punisher had revealed his true form, there was no need for the Imperial Tutor to hide. Swoosh! Purple light flashed. The Imperial Tutor returned to his original form. He was a Great Emperor Heaven Punisher with the upper body of a human and the lower body of a leopard. His entire body was light purple and covered in spots. He gave off a fierce aura. He stood behind Great Emperor Heaven Punisher and held a black sword that was as wide as a bench. He locked onto Yun Yao and Ji Ku with a murderous aura. Wherever Great Emperor Heaven Punisher goes, all worlds will submit to him. Worms of the human race, you only have 2 choices. Submit to me or die. Yun Yao and Ji Ku stared coldly at Great Emperor Heaven Punisher and the Imperial Tutor. They memorized their appearances and auras. Ji Ku cast a spell with her left hand and held the Origin Stone Divine Spear in her right hand. She pointed at the Imperial Tutor and shouted, "Lowly bastard, you want to find Brother Tianqing? Then you'll have to get past us first. I don't care how powerful the great Emperor Heaven Punisher is or how many worlds you've conquered. All I know is that the world of 5 elements will be your burial ground. Although she was a woman, Ji Ku's boldness and domineering aura were not inferior to that of a man. Brother Qianqing. Imperial Preceptor raised his eyebrows, the corners of his mouth curled into a sinister sneer. He turned to look at Great Emperor Heaven Punisher and said, Your Majesty, I'm sure that these 2 women are very close to Ji Tianqing. Take them down and we'll be able to find Ji Tianqing's hiding place. Great Emperor Heaven Punisher smiled coldly and said, Then what are we waiting for? Take them down. As soon as he finished speaking, Great Emperor Heaven Punisher led the charge toward Yun Yao. In a flash, he teleported in front of Yun Yao and swung his fist at her. Yun Yao instinctively raised her swords and blocked in front of her. Bam! With a muffled sound, Yun Yao was sent flying by Great Emperor Heaven Punisher's punch. She turned pale from the sudden attack and spat out a mouthful of blood. She only managed to stop after flying for 50 miles. Eldest senior sister. Ji Ku immediately let out a cry of surprise, revealing a look of deep worry. She had not expected Great Emperor Heaven Punisher to be so powerful. Yun Yao was no match for him at all. She had been sent flying with just 1 blow. The gap between their strength was too big. Ji Ku instinctively waved her spear and tried to stab it toward Great Emperor Heaven Punisher to save Yun Yao. However, at this moment, the Imperial Tutor also struck. Babe, your opponent is me. The Imperial Preceptor shouted in a low voice, full of confidence. He waved his black broadsword, which was more than 10 feet long, and slashed at Ji Ku with all his might. Swoosh! Swoosh! 3 dazzling purple swords slashed down toward Ji Ku's head with the power to annihilate everything in their path. At this critical moment, Ji Ku held the Dawn Stone Divine Spear tightly without hesitation and swung it with all her might. Boom! 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 The Dawn Stone Divine Spear collided with the 3 purple sword radiances and created a series of earth-shattering sounds. The purple sword radiances shattered into countless purple light shards and scattered in the sky. The Dawn Stone Divine Spear buzzed from the impact. It was lifted up high and almost flew out of Ji Ku's hand. The violent impact shook Ji Ku and sent her flying, and she landed 30 miles away. She had just neutralized the impact and was about to counterattack when the Imperial Tutor swung his sword toward her again. At the same time, Great Emperor Heaven Punisher teleported in front of Yun Yao and swung his palm at her again. Chapter 2639. The Emperor of Heaven Slayer's attack was simple. He didn't use any weapons. He only used his fists and legs to attack, but they were still powerful enough to destroy the world. When he struck with his palm, a palm shadow as large as a mountain slashed down like a giant blade toward Yun Yao's head. It was such a simple attack. There was nothing fancy about it. He just used his strength and speed to the maximum. However, Yun Yao felt immense pressure under the palm shadow. Even her divine soul was locked onto. There was nowhere for her to run. At this critical moment, she had to use all her strength to perform her most powerful trump card. A cold light covers the heavens and earth, 2 sleeves dazzle the starry sky. She shouted. She waved her 2 Dawn Stone Divine Swords and slashed out 2 starry swords that were thousands of feet long. Boom! Crack! The 2 starry swords hit the purple palm shadow from the left and right. There was an earth-shattering explosion. A loud explosion shook the heavens, spreading over a radius of 10,000 miles, shaking the clouds. The starry swords and the purple palm shadow shattered at the same time. They turned into light shards that blotted out the sky and scattered in all directions. A shockwave that could destroy heaven and earth erupted with a loud bang, blasting Yun Yao back 30 miles. The Emperor of Heaven Slayer only swayed a little. He didn't even take a step back. Such a scene caused Yun Yao's eyes to widen in shock. She revealed an incomparably shocked expression. How is this possible? How can he be so powerful? I used all my strength to perform my sword technique, but it was nullified by his casual attack. Yunyao wouldn't have believed it if she hadn't seen it with her own eyes. She was a LV3 true immortal after all. She was talented and had a noble bloodline. She had mastered an earth-shattering primordial divine skill. Her combat strength was outstanding. She might not lose even if she fought against a LV6 true immortal. Now, she finally understood. No wonder Ji Tianqing had escaped with serious injuries when he fought the Emperor of Heaven Slayer. She was sure that the Emperor of Heaven Slayer had reached the peak of the true immortal realm. Just as Ji Tianqing had said, he was half a step to the Heaven God realm. No, I can't fight him head-on. I can only try to deal with him. Yunyao soon calmed down and decided to change her strategy. She didn't want to confront the Emperor of Heaven Extermination head-on. At the same time, the great Emperor of Heaven Slayer frowned and his face was filled with astonishment. He stared at Yunyao with a burning gaze and muttered to himself, I didn't expect that this woman's strength is also the same as Ji Tianqing's. She has reached the third level of the true God realm. Moreover, her bloodline talent was extraordinary, and her battle prowess far surpassed that of ordinary true gods. The tiny 5 elements world actually contains such a shocking secret. It really makes one look forward to it. The Emperor of Heaven Extermination sneered. He charged at Yunyao again and attacked with his palm. Yunyao no longer retaliated and hurriedly teleported away. Shwa! With a flash of white light, her figure instantly disappeared and teleported to the sky 200 miles away. Trying to escape. How naive. Emperor Tian Fa sneered disdainfully and chased after him again. Moreover, he released an invisible divine power that covered a radius of 1,000 miles and locked onto Yunyao's aura. The invisible pressure instantly suppressed Yunyao and made it difficult for her to move. Her speed became extremely slow. In a short while, the Emperor of Heaven Extermination caught up with her and used both his fists and legs to attack her. Yunyao had nowhere to hide. She could only wield her 2 swords and perform her sword skills. Power of heaven and earth, sun and moon. Yin and yang, 5 elements, heaven and earth, reincarnation. Great heaven and earth sword. She shouted loudly and waved the Dawn Stone divine sword with both hands. She slashed out with the most dazzling sword. Kaboom! The shocking giant sword slashed through the sky. It contained a power that could turn the universe upside down and shake the heavens and earth. It shattered the purple light in the sky. The mountain-sized palm shadows and fist radiance were shattered into pieces of purple light and scattered in all directions. The violent impact sent Yunyao flying. She spat out a mouthful of blood and flew 100 miles away. Emperor Tian Fa was not injured at all. He broke through the light pieces and shockwaves and continued to charge toward Yunyao. On the other side, in the sky 1,000 miles away, Ji Ku and the Imperial Tutor were also fighting fiercely. The mountains collapsed and the earth cracked. Heavenly flames flew everywhere. The Imperial Tutor relied on his strength and cultivation level to attack aggressively. He waved his broadsword and created a sky full of purple light blades that drowned Ji Ku. Unfortunately, Ji Ku had mastered the 4 divine flames and inherited the divine Tao of the divine bird phoenix. Her strength and style were also very violent. She used the divine flames to protect her body and a pair of dark red wings appeared on her back. She held the Dawn Stone divine spear with both hands and charged forward valiantly. In the face of the purple light blades that blotted out the sky, she was not afraid at all. She stabbed and swept with her spear. Her spear skills were flawless. Bam! 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 Dozens of flaming spear auras collided with the purple light blades. A series of muffled sounds echoed in the sky. The spear auras and the light blades collapsed at the same time. Dazzling sparks bloomed in the sky. It was as if flames were falling from the sky. In just a few seconds, the two of them had exchanged more than 500 moves. The Imperial Tutor was shocked. He could not believe that he could not injure Ji Ku. Although he was more powerful than Ji Ku and had the initiative to attack, he still had the upper hand. On the surface, he did indeed have the upper hand, beating Ji Ku until she was forced to retreat. However, all of his divine spells were neutralized by Ji Ku. Ji Ku's defense was watertight. She attacked and retreated in an orderly manner. She did not panic at all. She even used her divine spells and attacked and retreated in a well-organized manner. She was extremely experienced in battle. Even though she was weaker, she could accurately avoid her weaknesses. She was on par with the Imperial Tutor. This shocked the Imperial Tutor. He even had the illusion that he was not facing a low-level true god. Instead, he was facing a high-level true god who had been through thousands of battles. It was a strange feeling. What the Imperial Tutor did not know was that Ji Ku was once a Lord God powerhouse from the upper realm. Back then, Mingyu followed Kenshin and fought everywhere. She spent her life in battle and killed countless gods. In terms of combat experience, even 100 Imperial Preceptors added together would not be able to compare with Ji Ku. However, Ji Ku was only a level 3 true god. That was why she was able to fight the Imperial Tutor to a draw. If she had reached level 4 true god, she would be able to defeat the Imperial Tutor in no time with her rich battle experience. As time passed, the Imperial Tutor became more and more frightened. He wanted to end the battle quickly, but he did not expect to fight to a draw with Ji Ku. It was difficult to determine the winner. Moreover, Ji Ku's divine power was strong and continuous. She did not show any signs of weakening even after exchanging tens of thousands of blows. What made the Imperial Tutor even more uneasy was that he was gradually losing the initiative. He could no longer suppress Ji Ku. Instead, he was being restrained by Ji Ku. After fighting for an hour, he was led by Ji Ku and moved tens of thousands of miles to the east. The Imperial Tutor became more and more anxious. He finally could not help but use his ultimate move. 5 dragons fighting the heavens. The Imperial Tutor roared in a powerful tone. His body emitted a dazzling purple light and ignited a divine flame that soared into the sky. The surging purple divine flame formed 5 ferocious divine dragons, releasing an aura that could destroy heaven and earth. Chapter 2640. Kill. Following the Imperial Preceptor's roar, 5 purple divine dragons bared their fangs and brandished their claws as they descended from the sky towards Ji Ku. Before the divine dragons arrived, the invisible divine power had already locked onto Ji Ku. She had difficulty moving, and she could not teleport to dodge. At this critical moment, she could only wave her Origin Stone Divine Spear and use her trump card. Nirvana Flame. She shouted with a serious expression. Endless Nirvana Flame burst out of her body and infused it into the Origin Stone Divine Spear. She held the Origin Stone Divine Spear tightly with both hands and stabbed it toward the sky with all her might. Instantly, the Origin Stone Divine Spear shot out 5 dazzling pillars of divine fire. Boom! Crack! The 5 pillars of Nirvana Flame hit the 5 purple divine dragons, creating a loud explosion that shook the sky. In an instant, the purple light dragon and the pillar of divine fire disintegrated, turning into light shards that covered the sky and the earth, scattering in the sky. The destructive shockwave, wrapped in the Nirvana Flame that could burn everything, swept across a radius of 3,000 miles. Instantly, the mountains and forests within 3,000 miles were burned into charred earth and ashes, turning into ruins. Ji Ku and the Imperial Tutor were also sent flying. Both of them looked pained as blood flowed out of their orifices. They flew hundreds of miles and crashed into the ruins. Bam! Bam! Two huge craters appeared on the pitch-black, scorched earth and rubble splashed everywhere. The Imperial Preceptor ended up with an ashen face. He coughed violently and spat out a few mouthfuls of blood before he crawled out of the ruins. Damn that *tch. She is not as powerful as me. How could she injure me? What kind of divine fire is that? How could it be so terrifying? The Imperial Tutor was shocked and furious. At the same time, he felt deeply humiliated. The Imperial Tutor of the Heaven Punisher race had been injured by a nameless human girl. If news of this spread, he would lose face. No. I must kill that *tch today. If I can't even deal with her, how am I going to answer to the great Emperor? The Imperial Tutor discarded all the distracting thoughts in his mind, leaving only this one thought. He circulated his internal energy to suppress his injuries and regained his composure. Then, he charged toward Ji Ku with a murderous aura. At this time, Ji Ku had already left the ruins. He transformed into a golden divine light and fled towards the east. Swish! The reason she ran away was not because she was afraid of the Imperial Tutor's strength. In fact, if she were to fight recklessly, she would definitely be able to defeat the Imperial Tutor. But she didn't do it. This was because she was worried about Yun Yao's safety. She knew that Yun Yao was no match for the Heaven Punisher. At this moment, Yun Yao was being chased by the great Emperor of Heaven Punisher. She had already fled tens of thousands of miles to the east. She could not afford to waste her time on the Imperial Tutor. She had to help Yun Yao deal with the Emperor of Heaven extermination. Shwa! Ji Ku was filled with worry. She flew across the sky and headed towards the east. 200 miles behind her, the Imperial Tutor also came to his senses. He roared angrily and started to chase after her. Bitch, don't even think about escaping. No matter where you go, I will take your life. However, Ji Ku turned a deaf ear to the Imperial Tutor's words. She did not even bother to listen to him. She used the power of the Source Stone Divine Spear to increase her speed to the maximum. She swept across the sky like an aurora. In a short while, the Imperial Tutor was thousands of miles away from her. The Imperial Tutor was embarrassed and angry. He quickly took out his divine battleship and chased after her. At the same time, in a vast mountain range 30,000 miles away, Yun Yao transformed into a ray of starlight and sped across the sky. She was already heavily injured. Her moon-white dress had long been tattered and covered in blood. Her hair was already crooked, and her waist-length hair was also in a mess. Her injuries were very serious. Her pretty face was covered in a bloody mist, and blood was still flowing out from the corner of her mouth. Even her divine power was rapidly depleting, and her strength was weakening. Her internal organs were in excruciating pain, and her mind was also very tired. However, she pursed her lips tightly and endured her injuries as she continued to speed towards the east. She had already planned to lure the great Emperor of Heaven Punisher out of the vast divine nation and into the 100,000 Mountains. The 100,000 Mountains was a mountain range with a radius of a few million miles. It was located at the intersection of the three divine nations. It was a desolate place with a harsh environment. Only by luring the great Emperor of Heaven Punisher there could she prevent innocent people from dying. However, she was still a million miles away from the 100,000 Mountains. Even if she kept teleporting, it would still take her 3 days to reach there. Thinking of this, she felt a strong sense of helplessness in her heart. She was worried that she would not be able to reach the 100,000 Mountains in her current state. 200 miles behind her, the great Emperor of Heaven Punisher was still hot on her heels. His posture was confident and calm. With his hands behind his back, he crossed 100 miles with each step. His figure kept flashing in the sky. Moreover, he had exchanged a few thousand blows with Yun Yao, but there was not a single wound on his body. Even his divine power had not been depleted much. He was still in peak condition. In his eyes, Yun Yao was definitely going to die. There was no way that she could escape. He did not use his ultimate move to kill Yun Yao because he wanted to force Yun Yao into a corner and see if she would ask Ji Tianqing for help. Soon, 3 days had passed. During these 3 days, the great Emperor of Heaven Punisher had caught up to Yun Yao 7 times. The great Emperor of Heaven Punisher had attacked Yun Yao 7 times with his divine skill, leaving her covered in wounds. She was covered in wounds and bleeding profusely. Even her white dress was soaked. After being severely injured, her divine power was greatly weakened, and her divine soul was severely damaged. She only had 40% of her strength left. She was at the end of her tether and could not resist the great Emperor of Heaven Punisher's attacks. When the great Emperor of Heaven Punisher caught up to her 7 times, she was almost killed by him. At the most critical moment, Ji Ku had caught up to her and blocked the fatal blow for her. As a result, Ji Ku was also severely injured by the great Emperor of Heaven Punisher. His life was in danger. Fortunately, the two of them had finally escaped from the vast divine nation and entered the 100,000 mountains. There were endless mountain ranges in all directions, and as far as the eye could see, there were towering peaks that reached into the clouds. Yun Yao and Ji Ku heaved a sigh of relief. However, the great Emperor of Heaven Punisher suddenly sped up and caught up to them. "It's time for you to die. This mountain range will be your burial ground." The great Emperor of Heaven Punisher shouted emotionlessly. He raised his fists and threw out 2 fist radiances that were as big as mountains toward Yun Yao and Ji Ku. Whoosh! Whoosh! The purple fist radiance that was tens of thousands of feet wide tore through the air and reached Yun Yao and Ji Ku. The two of them were covered in blood. They were weak and could not resist the attack. They were about to be hit by the purple fist radiance and be smashed into pieces. At this critical moment, Yun Yao and Ji Ku did not panic. They were still calm. The two of them looked at each other and reached out to hold each other's hands. Yun Yao used her divine sense to send a message and said helplessly, "Cuckoo, our mission is complete. We can only lead them here." "Yes. We are both severely injured. We can only retreat first and think of a countermeasure," Ji Ku replied. Then, she was about to use a secret technique to communicate with the Jiutian 10 Absolutes Tower in the ruins of God. With just a thought, she could bring Yun Yao back to the divine pagoda in an instant. However, at this moment, the 100,000 mountains suddenly changed. Chapter 2641. In the core region of the 5 elemental world. Sui Meng. Calm within the golden sphere of light, Ji Tianqing was still lying on the golden mountain. Ever since he released the God King's blood and performed the blood sacrifice, he had been unconscious. He didn't know how long he had been unconscious. It could be 3 to 5 days, 3 to 5 months, or 3 to 5 years. Back then, he had lost 70% of his God blood, his flame of life had almost been extinguished, and his God body had almost been shattered. He was on the verge of death. But while he was unconscious, his God blood had turned into tens of thousands of blood droplets and seeped into the golden mountain, quietly refining countless world veins. Using his God blood as a bridge, he established a bloodline connection with the 5 elemental world. His life and God's soul were closely connected to the 5 elemental world. They lived and died together. Naturally, the golden mountain also released a vast amount of world energy to nourish him. His flame of life reignited, his strength and lifespan began to increase, and his injuries quickly healed. After all, he was one with the 5 elemental world. If he died, the 5 elemental world would also fall apart and shatter. Similarly, if the 5 elemental world was destroyed, his life would also come to an end and he would die. Such a miraculous and special symbiotic relationship was very rare in the myriad worlds. But in the God realm, such a thing was not rare. Because, in the God realm, there were many powerful beings who would also refine a star and treat it as their natal star. Especially those gods who cultivated the Tao of faith. Most of them would think of ways to refine a natal star. They would settle billions of living beings on their natal stars, making countless living beings worship them. The stronger the living beings were, the stronger the power of faith they gathered. So, in order to increase their strength, those gods would promote the reproduction of living beings, helping billions of living beings to gain intelligence and cultivate the martial Tao. Ji Tianqing's current situation was somewhat similar to those gods. However, he didn't cultivate the Tao of faith, so he couldn't absorb powerful energy from the living beings of the five elemental world. As time passed, Ji Tianqing's injuries gradually healed. The vast and mighty world energy not only healed his injuries, but also increased his lifespan sharply, reaching over 100,000 years. Moreover, his strength was rapidly recovering. From the first level of the true God realm to the second level of the true God realm, then to the third level, when he gradually regained consciousness, he discovered that his strength had already reached the fifth level of the true God realm. Compared to before he fainted, not only had he recovered his strength, he had also advanced by 2 levels. This was definitely a pleasant surprise, a great harvest. Ji Tianqing was overjoyed. While secretly rejoicing, he hurriedly used his mind to sense his own situation. In just a few moments, he had seen his own situation. Not only were his injuries completely healed, but his divine power was even more vigorous than before. His divine body had also become stronger. Furthermore, he also discovered something interesting. When he used his mind to check his divine body, his mind could sense the situation around the world through the veins of the world in the Golden Mountain. On the wasteland continent, tens of thousands of ancient beasts surged like a tide on the vast grassland, letting out loud rumbles that shook the heavens. Countless beast-men warriors, dressed in animal skins and armed with bows and arrows, were hunting demonic beasts in the mountains. On the easternmost continent, tens of thousands of sects stood in great numbers among the mountains and rivers, and countless cities were located between the rivers. It was a prosperous place. Scholars attended schools, warriors joined sects, merchants and peddlers passed through the streets, and soldiers went to war to protect the country. On the northern desert continent, there were icy plains that had not melted for tens of thousands of years, giant icebergs that had lasted for millions of years, and many snow-white demonic beasts roamed freely. Hundreds of millions of citizens of the northern desert were wrapped in white bear skins as they shuttled back and forth between the ice and snow. Tens of thousands of white cities were built from ice and snow, and there were glorious lights and temples. On the Tianxian continent, the scorching sun was sometimes high up in the sky, and sometimes it was raining cats and dogs. The endless heavenly sea surged with monstrous waves that pounced on thousands of coastal cities. Martial arts powerhouses joined forces to resist the wind and rain, protecting the peace of the region. The prosperous Zhongzhou was even more prosperous than before, and both civilization and martial arts were rapidly developing. On the Xinwu continent, there were beautiful mountains and rivers everywhere. The people of various races lived in peace and contentment, and the warriors were full of vitality. Tianqing Divine Kingdom and Luoshui Divine Kingdom were peaceful, but within the Taihao Divine Kingdom, the citizens were inexplicably panicking and running around. The customs of the various continents, as well as the myriad scenes of the mountains and rivers, appeared in Ji Tianqing's mind like flowing light. Every scene, every image, was exceptionally clear and vivid. It was as if he was there in person. Such a miraculous scene filled him with surprise and joy, and he could not help but exclaim, "Heavens, I actually control 5 continents." Indeed, Ji Tianqing's mind was connected to the wildlands, the easternmost continent, the northern desert, the mysterious heaven continent, and the Xinwu continent. Not only could he see every corner of the 5 continents, but he could also control all of their movements. He could even break the peace of the 5 continents with a single thought and change the landscape of the mountains and rivers. Whoosh! With a single thought, an iceberg that spanned tens of thousands of kilometers in the northern desert continent collapsed and turned into ice and snow. With another thought, a vast forest in the easternmost continent was instantly buried underground and turned into a giant abyss. With another thought, dozens of mountains in the Shinwu continent's 100,000 mountains were swallowed up by the vast earth, causing a terrifying earthquake. Ji Tianqing was very satisfied with the ability to control the 5 continents and change the landscape with a single thought. In a trance, he felt as if he had returned to his peak and had returned to his days as the God King. Similarly, he could cause the world to collapse with a flick of his finger and destroy the stars with a wave of his hand. He was supreme and omnipotent. Ji Tianqing was immersed in this excitement when he suddenly sensed an astonishing energy fluctuation coming from the Shinwu continent's 100,000 mountains. The valiant energy fluctuation was enough to shake the heavens and earth and instantly destroy tens of thousands of kilometers of mountains and rivers. This was not something that a martial artist could do, it was the power of a god. Ji Tianqing froze for a moment and then frowned as his mind locked onto the 100,000 mountains. The scenery of the 100,000 mountains immediately appeared in his mind. Endless majestic mountain ranges, nearly 100,000 peaks that pierced through the clouds, and the winding rivers that flowed through the mountains appeared clearly in his mind. His divine consciousness quickly swept across the mountains, and he quickly found the source of the divine power fluctuation. In a lush green mountain range, there were 2 graceful figures flying high up in the sky. They had beautiful faces, and their bodies emitted divine power fluctuations. However, they seemed to be in a sorry state, and it was obvious that they had suffered heavy injuries. In the sky not too far away from them, a tall powerhouse that resembled a dragon horse was chasing after them with a murderous aura. When Ji Tianqing saw the appearance of the 3, his pupils shrank, and his eyes flashed with killing intent. Chapter 2642. The Great Emperor of Heaven Punisher. Ji Tianqing recognized him immediately. The Great Emperor of Heaven Punisher with purple hair resembling a dragon horse was the Great Emperor of Heaven Punisher. And those 2 peerlessly beautiful women of the human race were Ji Ku and Yun Yao. After so many years, the Great Emperor of Heaven Punisher finally found the 5 Elements realm to seek revenge. No wonder the people of the vast divine nation panicked and fled in large numbers. The Great Emperor of Heaven Punisher must have created chaos and started a massacre to create this situation. I was asleep in the core of the realm. Yao Yao and Kuku had no choice but to fight the Great Emperor of Heaven Punisher. Unfortunately, they were too weak. Even if they joined forces, they could not defeat the Great Emperor of Heaven Punisher. These thoughts flashed through Ji Tianqing's mind. He quickly figured out what had happened. Just then, he saw the Great Emperor of Heaven Punisher attack. He threw out 2 purple fist radiances the size of mountains. The destructive fist radiances locked onto Yun Yao and Ji Ku's auras and sealed off the area within 1,000 miles. Yun Yao and Ji Ku were severely injured. They could not dodge the fist radiances at all. The 2 of them were about to be hit by the purple fist radiances. Even if they did not die, they would be severely injured. At this critical moment, Ji Tianqing was filled with anger. He instinctively manipulated the heavens and the earth to launch a counterattack. Boom! 2 dark green mountains that were 10,000 feet tall suddenly rose from the ground and flew into the sky, blocking Yun Yao and Ji Ku. Boom! Boom! In the next moment, the 2 purple fist radiances hit the mountains, creating a deafening explosion. Following the earth-shattering sound, the 2 mountains turned into dust and gravel that scattered in the sky. Everything within 100 miles was covered by dust and gravel. The heavens and the earth were in chaos. The Great Emperor of Heaven Punisher's purple fist radiance was blocked just like that. He was stunned on the spot. His brows furrowed in confusion as he searched around for something. With his strength and eyesight, he could tell that it was not Yun Yao and Ji Ku's counterattack. There was definitely someone hiding in the dark and helping Yun Yao and Ji Ku block the fist light. Yun Yao and Ji Ko also understood this point. They were both startled for a moment, their faces full of doubt. The two of them couldn't figure out who it was that had helped them in the dark. The first answer that came to their minds was Ji Tianqing. However, they knew that Ji Tianqing had gone to the Earth's core a long time ago and had not appeared for many years. Moreover, both of them used their divine senses to search the surroundings, but they did not sense Ji Tianqing's aura. There's no trace of Tianxing within a radius of 30,000 miles. It shouldn't be him who saved us, aside from Brother Tianqing, who else would help us? Who is strong enough to block the attack of the great Emperor of Heaven extermination? Yun Yao and Ji Ko frowned and thought to themselves. At this moment, the great Emperor of Heaven Punisher had also guessed that Ji Tianqing was behind this. However, he could not find Ji Tianqing's aura anywhere. He was not so sure. Therefore, he waved his hands again and shot out two sky-splitting purple blades towards Yun Yao and Ji Ko. Ji Tianqing. You despicable be ****. Do you dare to show yourself and fight me? The great Emperor of Heaven Punisher roared in disdain. His voice reverberated in the air. The two sky-splitting purple blades, which were 10 miles long, locked onto Yun Yao and Ji Ko's aura and slashed towards them. At this critical moment, Ji Ko held Yun Yao's hand tightly and was ready to retreat into the heavenly pagoda. However, both of them were still hopeful. They wanted to see if the person who had helped them in secret would help them again. The result did not disappoint them. Another loud rumble came from the depths of the earth. The next moment, endless dark red lava condensed into two fire pillars that were 10,000 feet tall and shot up into the sky. Bang! Bang! The two dark red pillars of fire blocked the heaven-splitting violet blade and exploded with two earth-shaking explosions. The sky-splitting purple blades shattered and turned into billions of purple light shards that scattered in the sky. The fire pillars also shattered and turned into rolling waves of fire that covered the sky. At the same time, two more fire pillars shot out from the ground under the great Emperor of Heaven Punisher's feet and shot towards him. The great Emperor of Heaven Punisher's expression changed. He curled his lips into a disdainful smile and stomped his foot. You be ****, is this all you've got? How disappointing. As he spoke, two shadows of hooves the size of mountains appeared from his two front hooves and smashed into the fire pillars. Boom! Crack! With a loud bang, the fire pillars were smashed into pieces. They turned into flames that covered the sky and scattered across the land. Instantly, more than a dozen mountains and countless forests were set ablaze. Red flames rose into the sky and thick smoke billowed. Between the heavens and the earth, a cold shout filled with anger rang out. Great Emperor of Heaven Punisher, you useless old dog! What can you do even if you sneak into the world of 5 elements? A deep and vigorous sound wave reverberated endlessly between heaven and earth. The great Emperor of Heaven Punisher, Yun Yao, and Ji Ko's expressions changed when they heard that. Yun Yao and Ji Ko widened their eyes in disbelief. However, their faces were filled with surprise. The two of them were both surprised and overjoyed. They could not believe that the person who had attacked them secretly was Ji Tianqing. The great Emperor of Heaven Punisher's face turned pale. His eyes were filled with anger and his murderous intent surged. Ji Tianqing. You be ****, you've been playing tricks. Do you think that by hiding in the dark and using these petty tricks, you can stop this emperor's attack? You're too naive. I suggest that you come out and accept your death as soon as possible. Otherwise, I'll let you see how I kill those 2 women with your own eyes. The great Emperor of Heaven Punisher roared furiously. He formed a divine seal with his palms and used a destructive divine skill to attack Yun Yao and Ji Ko. Heaven Punisher. As the great Emperor of Heaven Punisher roared, endless purple light shot out from his palms. It formed thousands of swords, spears, swords, and halberds and scattered in all directions. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Thousands of purple lights flashed and the shadows of swords and sabers appeared. They were about to form an array with a radius of 3,000 miles to seal off the land. The great Emperor of Heaven Punisher had made up his mind. He wanted to imprison Yun Yao and Ji Ku with the Heaven Punisher divine array so that they could not escape. As he killed Yun Yao and Ji Ku in the array, Ji Tianqing could only watch from the dark. He could not interfere. Even if Ji Tianqing attacked, he would not be able to break the Heaven Punisher divine array. He would not be a threat to the great Emperor of Heaven Punisher. This was the best of both worlds. At this critical moment, Ji Tianqing's voice rang in Yun Yao and Ji Ku's minds. Yao Yao, Ku, your injuries are too serious. You can't stay here any longer. Go back to the heavenly tower to heal your injuries. Leave the great Emperor of Heaven Punisher to me. I'll take care of him. Yun Yao and Ji Ku were stunned. They asked in unison, what will you do if we run away? Ji Tianqing's voice rang in their minds again. Don't worry about me. I'm invincible in the 5 elements realm. Unless the great Emperor of Heaven Punisher can destroy the entire realm, he won't be able to hurt me. Chapter 2643. Ji Tianqing's reply stunned Yun Yao and Ji Ku. The two of them looked at each other in surprise and confusion. The two of them didn't understand what Ji Tianqing meant. However, they had absolute trust in Ji Tianqing. If Ji Tianqing dared to say that, there must be a reason. Soon, thousands of saber lights and sword images covered 1,500 kilometers, forming a light screen that covered the sky and covered the sun. The heaven-punishing divine formation was about to take shape. An invisible suppressive force had already descended from the sky. At such a critical moment, Yun Yao and Ji Ku did not hesitate anymore. They said at the same time, Tianqing, we'll leave first. You must be careful. As soon as they finished speaking, Ji Ku connected with the Jiutian 10 Absolutes tower. Swoosh! A golden light flashed, and she and Yun Yao disappeared into thin air. In the next moment, the two of them returned to the Jiutian 10 Absolutes tower in the north of the ruins of God. They appeared in the great Luo divine formation on the 5th level. Phew, they were finally safe. Both of them heaved a sigh of relief. Ji Ku looked relieved and said, fortunately, I've already refined the Jiutian 10 Absolutes tower. No matter where I am, I can come back with just a thought. Yun Yao nodded and said, that's right. This is the power of a king-grade divine artifact. The Jiutian 10 Absolutes tower can even block the will of heaven. It's a top king-grade divine artifact. After saying that, the two of them fell silent. Ji Ku hesitated for a moment and asked, eldest senior sister, what did big brother Tianqing mean just now? Yun Yao thought for a moment and said with some uncertainty, according to my experience, the words that he said should be referring to, he has formed some kind of connection with the 5 elements realm. The entire realm will protect him and become his shield. Perhaps so. We'll have to wait until he defeats the great Emperor of Heaven Punishing before we ask him about the details. Ji Ku said regretfully, it's a pity that we can't watch the battle in the tower. She wondered if brother Tianqing could defeat the Heaven Punisher. His own safety shouldn't be a problem, right? Yun Yao comforted her, don't worry. Since Tianqing is confident, we should trust him too. Let's go treat our wounds first and then contact him. Ji Ku nodded and entered the 6th level's distorted spacetime with her to recuperate in seclusion. Meanwhile, Ji Tianqing was at the core of the 5 elements world, sitting on the sacred golden mountain with his eyes closed. On the surface, he seemed to be resting with his eyes closed. But in fact, he was using his mind to control the veins of the world and the 100,000 mountains to fight against great Emperor Tian Fa. Thousands of purple saber lights and sword shadows formed a heaven-punishing divine formation that covered the sky and covered an area of 3,000 miles. The whole area had been sealed. The great Emperor of Heaven Punishing was inside. He was strengthened by an invisible force, which made his combat prowess even stronger. However, Yin Yao and Ji Ku had already escaped. The only opponent left for the great Emperor of Heaven Punishing was Ji Tianqing. But Ji Tianqing was hiding in the dark, so the great Emperor of Heaven Punishing couldn't do anything. Boom, boom, boom. The magma in the depths of the earth condensed into pillars of fire that shot toward Emperor Tianjie. The great Emperor of Heaven Punishing could only control the divine formation to release countless saber lights and sword shadows to attack the lava pillars. With loud noises, the saber lights and sword shadows collapsed. The lava pillars were all shattered and turned into raging fire. The entire Heaven Punishing divine formation was filled with dazzling fire. The mountains and the earth were all scorched. The terrifying heat and fire waves drowned the great Emperor of Heaven Punishing. He had to form a shield with his divine power to protect himself from the fire waves. However, apart from the lava pillars, thousands of stone pillars and spikes also flew out of the ground. The sharp stone pillars shot out like spears and drowned the great Emperor of Heaven Punishing. Bang, 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 bang. Countless stone spikes hit the great Emperor of Heaven Punishing, but they were all blocked by the divine power shield. The stone spikes were all shattered into pieces and scattered in the sky. The great Emperor of Heaven Punishing's divine power shield was also full of cracks and holes. He was furious, but he couldn't get away. He could only cast spells to defend himself. Damn it! My Heaven Punishing divine formation has already covered 3,000 miles. How did he get in? The great Emperor of Heaven Punishing mumbled in panic. He couldn't figure out what method Ji Tianqing had used to be able to attack him without him noticing at all. Even the Heaven Punishing divine formation he had set up couldn't do anything. Just as he was filled with doubts, a streak of faint purple light sped over from afar. Whoosh! In the blink of an eye, the purple light came close and quickly disappeared. A pitch-black battleship that was 1,000 feet long appeared. Without a doubt, it was the Imperial Tutor of Heaven Punishing. The Imperial Tutor stayed in the battleship and frowned as he looked at the Heaven Punishing divine formation that covered the sky. This is strange. With the great Emperor's strength, it should be easy for him to kill those two bitches. Why is he using the Heaven Punishing divine formation? And why is he fighting so fiercely? While he was confused, the great Emperor of Heaven Punishing ordered him, Imperial Tutor, those two women have escaped. I am now fighting with Ji Tianqing. This is strange. I don't know what method Ji Tianqing used to hide in the dark. Even I can't find him. Hold the fort and think of a way to drag Ji Tianqing out. The Imperial Tutor understood the seriousness of the situation. He immediately replied, "Yes, Great Emperor. Don't worry." He had thought that it would be easy. However, after he released his divine sense and searched the surrounding 60,000 miles, he still couldn't find Ji Tianqing. He finally realized that the situation was tricky. His mood and expression turned serious. Damn it! Where is Ji Tianqing hiding? If he can fight with the great Emperor, he must be within 60,000 miles. The Imperial Tutor frowned as he pondered. Many thoughts flashed through his mind. Suddenly, there was a deafening sound of something shattering. Kaboom! The Heaven Punishing divine formation that covered a radius of 3,000 miles was shattered by countless pillars of fire and rock spikes. It had collapsed. The violent impact was mixed with endless flames and sand as it hit the great Emperor of Heaven Punishing. Bang! The great Emperor of Heaven Punishing was sent flying. He rolled and crashed into the Imperial Tutor's battleship. The Imperial Tutor came to his senses and quickly cast a spell to catch the great Emperor of Heaven Punishing. Swoosh! He released a giant palm that blotted out the sky and grabbed the great Emperor of Heaven Punishing and pulled him back into the battleship. Before he could escape with the battleship, the mountains and earth around him suddenly collapsed, creating a huge abyss. 1,000-mile wide abyss appeared on the ground. It was like a giant black mouth that released a terrifying devouring force that enveloped the battleship. Crack, crack, crack. The warship immediately tilted and swayed as it fell into the abyss. The terrifying devouring force pulled at the battleship, causing countless cracks to appear on the battleship. The Imperial Tutor and the Great Emperor of Heaven Punishing were shocked. Their eyes widened in disbelief. Chapter 2644. The Imperial Tutor's battleship was not a heavenly god-level battleship. However, it was still a true god-level upper-tier battleship. Its speed and defense were both very powerful. Even the Great Emperor of Heaven Slayer would not be able to tear this battleship apart easily. But now, Ji Tianqing had done it. He did not even have to show his face. All he had to do was open up a 1,000-mile-wide chasm in the ground, and the Imperial Tutor's battleship could not escape. The terrifying devouring power not only sucked the battleship into the chasm. As the battleship struggled, the hull of the battleship began to twist and shatter. After 20 breaths of time, the entire battleship broke into pieces. Kacha kacha, with crisp cracking sounds, the battleship was torn into hundreds of pieces and fell into the chasm. The Great Emperor of Heaven Slayer and the Imperial Tutor were shocked. They hurriedly crawled out of the wreckage of the battleship and tried their best to escape from the chasm. The Great Emperor of Heaven Slayer unleashed all his strength. His entire body was engulfed in purple flames as he desperately fled into the distance. The Imperial Tutor did the same. However, he was not strong enough and could not make any headway. The devouring power continued to expand. It was like the bloody mouth of a giant beast that could devour heaven. It gradually closed in on the Imperial Tutor. The Imperial Tutor was terrified. He was extremely anxious. He screamed at the top of his lungs and struggled wildly. However, the powerful devouring power was like an invisible hand that grabbed him and dragged him into the chasm. The Imperial Tutor was about to fall into the chasm. What awaited him was a torrential sea of lava and fire. At this critical moment, the Great Emperor of Heaven Slayer rushed over. He grabbed the Imperial Tutor's arm and dragged him out. Swoosh! There was a flash of purple light. The Great Emperor of Heaven Slayer and the Imperial Tutor disappeared. In the next moment, the two of them teleported thousands of miles away and appeared in the sky above a mountain range in the distance. The Imperial Tutor looked relieved that he had survived the disaster. He squeezed out a smile on his pale face. The Great Emperor of Heaven Slayer heaved a sigh of relief. His chest rose and fell rapidly as he panted. Damn bastard! How did he do it? Could it be the damned law of Earth again? Emperor Tian Fa cursed as he panted. Back then, on the barren planet near Purple Heaven Star, he had witnessed Ji Tianqing's law of Earth. Now, Ji Tianqing was hiding in the dark, and he and the Imperial Tutor were in deep trouble. He was basically certain that Ji Tianqing was relying on the power of the laws of Earth to achieve such an effect. But what infuriated him the most was, even though he knew this was the case, he couldn't fight back. Imperial Tutor, don't just stand there. Let's leave this place first, and then we can make further plans. The Great Emperor of Heaven Punisher did not dare waste any more time. He quickly fled with the Imperial Tutor. He had already determined that the current Ji Tianqing was very different from the past. Not only were his methods and tricks more profound, but his strength had also increased significantly. Great Emperor Tian Fa even had a bad feeling. He had a feeling that his trip to the world of 5 elements would not go smoothly. Whoosh! With a flash of purple light, the Great Emperor of Heaven Punisher and the Imperial Tutor teleported 800 miles away. They crossed dozens of mountains and flew toward the south. They wanted to leave the 100,000 mountains and get rid of Ji Tianqing as soon as possible. However, just as the two of them teleported to the sky above a mountain, the mountain shattered and turned into dust. The metal ores in the mountain and the ground were instantly sucked dry. They condensed into 12 pale golden spears and shot toward the great Emperor of Heaven Punisher and the Imperial Tutor. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The spears pierced through the sky and surrounded the great Emperor of Heaven Punisher and the Imperial Tutor with the power to pierce through everything. Both of them looked serious. They had to take out their divine weapons and cast spells to block the attack. Bang, 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 bang. The two of them slashed at the 12 golden spears with overwhelming saber radiance and sword shadows. A series of muffled sounds rang out. The golden spears and saber radiance and sword shadows all shattered and scattered in the sky. After neutralizing Ji Tianqing's attack, the great Emperor of Heaven Punisher and the Imperial Tutor didn't stay any longer. They continued to run into the distance. They couldn't find Ji Tianqing at all. Of course, they couldn't fight back. Other than blocking the attacks, they could only run away. There was nothing else they could do. However, as soon as the two of them ran for 300 miles, more rock spikes emerged from the ground, the mountain, and the forest. Bang, 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 bang. The great Emperor of Heaven Punisher and the Imperial Tutor swung their sabers and swords. They destroyed 80% of the rock spikes, but they were still hit dozens of times. Their divine power shields were shattered, and their faces turned ghastly pale. Then, the two of them continued to run in the sky. Ji Tianqing's pursuit and interception never stopped. Almost every second, the mountain, the ground, and the forest would launch an attack. They either intercepted or attacked the great Emperor of Heaven Punisher and the Imperial Tutor. There were magma pillars, dark golden light pillars, rock spikes, and all kinds of light and shadow formed by divine power. There were so many different kinds of attacks that it was impossible to defend against. Although the various attacks weren't very powerful and couldn't injure the great Emperor of Heaven Punisher and the Imperial Tutor, they didn't dare to fight head-on. Otherwise, they would still be injured and their divine power would be greatly depleted. They could only stay alert and carefully cast spells to block and neutralize the attacks. However, the attacks didn't stop. No matter where the great Emperor of Heaven Punisher and the Imperial Tutor ran, they couldn't escape. At first, it was fine. The two of them were always able to escape. However, as time went on, they became more and more tired and irritated. Their injuries kept worsening and their divine power was depleted. 4 hours later, the great Emperor of Heaven Punisher and the Imperial Tutor finally escaped from the 100,000 mountains. Everywhere they passed, the mountains and the ground within hundreds of thousands of miles were scorched and ruined. Countless ravines and abysses were left behind. The great Emperor of Heaven Punisher and the Imperial Tutor were exhausted. They were so depressed that they wanted to vomit blood. After escaping from the 100,000 mountains, the two of them flew above the grassland and heaved a sigh of relief. Phew! We're finally out of that damned place. The Imperial Tutor heaved a sigh of relief. He felt like he had just survived a disaster. The great Emperor of Heaven Punisher's eyes were cold. He clenched his fists and gritted his teeth as he cursed, Ji Tianqing kept attacking us but we couldn't fight back. We don't even know where he's hiding. What the hell is this? That despicable bastard. He's so despicable. I can't take this lying down. I have to find him as soon as possible and kill him. The two of them thought that they were out of danger after leaving the 100,000 mountains and coming to the grassland. However, as soon as the great Emperor of Heaven Punisher finished speaking, suddenly, a few wide ravines appeared on the boundless green grassland. Hundreds of dark red pillars of lava shot toward the great Emperor of Heaven Punisher and the Imperial Tutor with terrifying divine flames. The power of the dark red divine flames was comparable to the full-force attack of a level 8 true god. It was enough to kill the Imperial Tutor. It was enough to threaten the great Emperor of Heaven Punisher. The two of them were shocked and enraged. They couldn't believe their eyes. That bastard. We've already escaped to this place. How can he still attack us? Great Emperor, let's run. Chapter 26:45. In the face of imminent disaster, the Imperial Preceptor did not hesitate to speed up his escape. Of course, in order not to be accused of abandoning his master, he shouted to warn the Great Emperor of Heaven Punisher. When the Great Emperor of Heaven Punisher turned around, the Imperial Tutor was already 100 miles away. More than 60 lava pillars immediately engulfed the Great Emperor of Heaven Punisher. ****. The Imperial Tutor was so cowardly that he had fled alone. The Great Emperor of Heaven Punisher was so angry that his body trembled. He could not help but curse. But he knew that now was not the time to be angry. He hurriedly waved his divine sword and slashed out dozens of purple sword radiances at the lava pillars around him. Bam! 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 A series of muffled sounds rang out. The sword radiances collapsed and fire splattered everywhere. The Great Emperor of Heaven Punisher had neutralized Ji Tianqing's attack, but his hair was disheveled and his body was charred. He looked rather pathetic. His divine power was also rapidly depleting and weakening. At the same time, more than 30 lava pillars changed directions and blasted toward the Imperial Tutor, who was 100 miles away. The Imperial Tutor panicked. He hurriedly formed a shield to block the attacks. He also waved his divine sword and slashed out countless sword radiances. Bam! 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 After a series of muffled sounds, the sword radiances and lava pillars all collapsed. However, the dark red divine flames had destroyed the Imperial Tutor's divine power shield. Half of his body was charred black, and one of his legs was burned to ashes. The heart-wrenching pain caused him to let out a shrill scream that reverberated endlessly in the sky. Ah! Ji Tianqing, you be ****, you be ****. I will tear you to pieces and burn your bones to ashes. However, the Imperial Tutor's response was more than 100 lava pillars. Each pillar was more than 100 feet tall and surrounded by surging red divine flames. They blasted toward the Imperial Tutor. The Imperial Preceptor's body suddenly trembled. His eyes were filled with deep fear. In his fear, he even forgot about the pain in his body and teleported away. However, he was still one step too slow. Although he dodged more than 90 fire pillars, he was still hit by 7 of them. Pang pang pang. Another series of muffled sounds rang out. Half of the Imperial Tutor's body was completely burned to ashes by the divine flames and scattered in the sky. The remaining half of his body was also charred black, with black smoke rising in spirals. The wound was charred, and the purple divine blood that oozed out was also burned dry by the divine flame. The violent force of the impact sent the Imperial Tutor flying, rolling and crashing into the distance. The incomparable pain made him so angry that he almost lost his mind. Not far away, Great Emperor Tian Fa saw the Imperial Tutor being severely injured with his own eyes, but he couldn't save him in time. Furious, the Emperor of Heaven Punisher cursed 3 times. He quickly teleported to the Imperial Tutor's side to help him. He used a grappling technique and grabbed the Imperial Tutor with his giant purple palm. He teleported 800 miles away. However, hundreds of 5-colored giant swords emerged from the grassland and shot up into the sky from the ground. The Imperial Tutor was in so much pain that he couldn't defend himself. The Emperor of Heaven Punisher had no choice but to protect the Imperial Tutor. He waved his divine sword and used an exquisite sword technique, sending out hundreds of purple sword radiances. Pang pang pang. Crack. 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 The sword radiances clashed in the sky, creating muffled sounds and shattering sounds. The Imperial Tutor was saved and his injuries didn't worsen. However, the Emperor of Heaven Punisher's shield was shattered by the 5-colored sword radiances. A dozen wounds were left on his body, so deep that his bones could be seen. Purple blood gushed out and sprinkled in the sky. The Great Emperor of Heaven Extermination frowned. His eyes were filled with shock. Damn it! What kind of power is this? How can it break through my defense? He had fought with Ji Tianqing before and knew that Ji Tianqing was only a true immortal. However, he was a half-step true immortal. He was almost invincible among those below the true immortal realm. Ji Tianqing wouldn't be able to hurt him, no matter how powerful his divine skill was. However, he was injured now. He could clearly tell that the power of the five-colored sword radiances wasn't the power of a true immortal. It was a very special and powerful divine power. The power made him feel like he was fighting against the mountains and the earth. The entire world was trying to kill him. That's definitely not divine power. Even a true immortal might not be able to release that kind of power. However, Ji Tianqing is only a true immortal. How did he do it? The Emperor of Heaven Punisher was filled with questions. He couldn't figure it out. While he was thinking, more than 300 golden giant swords emerged from the grassland and shot toward him like a rain of arrows. The Emperor of Heaven Punisher came to his senses. He didn't dare to think anymore and quickly teleported away. At the same time, in the golden light ball at the core of the world, Ji Tianqing sat on the golden mountain with his eyes closed. A satisfied smile appeared on his face. Ha ha ha. I'm closely connected to the five elements world. Not only can I control heaven and earth, but I can also release the power of the world. I knew it. Even a true immortal would be injured by the power of the world, let alone the Emperor of Heaven Punisher. It was obvious that Ji Tianqing had used the power of the world to injure the Emperor of Heaven Punisher. Before this, he had only controlled 5 continents. He could only practice controlling heaven and earth to fight the Emperor of Heaven Punisher. Now, he could freely control heaven and earth to attack the Emperor of Heaven Punisher and the Imperial Tutor. Therefore, he tried again. He tried to use the power of the world. As expected, he succeeded. It was very effective. This lifted his spirits and made him even more confident. Then, the Emperor of Heaven Punisher fled in the sky. He ran all the way to the Luoshui divine nation. Ji Tianqing sat on the golden mountain and used his mind to control heaven and earth to attack. He also released the power of the world to chase after the Emperor of Heaven Punisher. The Emperor of Heaven Punisher fled for several hours, covering hundreds of thousands of kilometers. His divine power had been greatly weakened, and his injuries were worsening. Dozens of wounds had appeared all over his body. As time passed, his situation would only worsen. He was only injured. In comparison, the Imperial Tutor's fate was much worse. He had only managed to escape 100,000 kilometers before he was killed by a blade of light condensed from the power of the world, and his body was torn to shreds. The Emperor of Heaven Punisher could not even protect himself, let alone save the Imperial Tutor. The dignified 6th-level true immortal Imperial Tutor had fallen just like that. In order to escape as quickly as possible and to defend against Ji Tianqing's attacks, the Emperor of Heaven Punisher had no choice but to take out his warship. The Heaven Punishing warship was a god-grade warship, and its defenses were extremely strong. Whoosh! In the blink of an eye, the Heaven Punishing warship had covered hundreds of kilometers with purple light. However, Ji Tianqing controlled 5 continents. His divine consciousness covered not only Shenwu continent, but the other 4 continents as well. As long as the Heaven Punishing warship did not leave Shenwu continent and the 5 elemental realm, it would still be under Ji Tianqing's control. Moreover, the Heaven Punishing warship was 10,000 meters long and as large as a mountain. Such a large target was much easier to hit than the Emperor of Heaven Punisher. Wherever the Heaven Punishing warship passed, tens of thousands of golden blades of light appeared and rained down like a torrential downpour. Boom, 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 boom. Every second, the Heaven Punishing warship was struck by the golden blades of light dozens of times. Chapter 2646. In the blink of an eye, an hour passed. Great Emperor Tian Fa drove the divine battleship and escaped 60,000 miles away. He was about to reach the border of the Luoshui divine nation. However, the divine battleship was hit by the golden light blade tens of thousands of times. Finally, it could not take it anymore and collapsed. The divine battleship, which was 30,000 feet long, was cut into pieces and scattered among the ruins. More than 2,000 people who had followed the great Emperor of Heaven punishing to the battle fell from the sky. Among them were 2,000 black-armored warriors, more than 30 golden-armored martial gods, and 2 LV-7 martial god realm commanders. These were the elites that great Emperor Tian Fa had handpicked. Originally, great Emperor Tian Fa had planned to send these elite warriors and martial gods to control the continents and divine nations after conquering the five elements world. But now, his plan had fallen through. The 2,000 black-armored warriors and golden-armored martial gods were scattered in the sky. They were exposed to Ji Tianqing's attacks. How could Ji Tianqing let go of such a great opportunity? Without hesitation, he controlled the heavens and earth and released the sacred and powerful power of the world. Tens of thousands of golden light blades shot toward the black-armored warriors and golden-armored martial gods. Swish! 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 The black-armored warriors and golden-armored martial gods found it difficult to move. They slowed down. Even though they were terrified when they saw the swish. Swish! 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 Great Emperor Tian Fa passed through the debris of the battleship and flew to the sky a few hundred miles away. When he saw this, his expression changed. He could not help but yell. Oh no! At this critical moment, he did not care about his own safety. He charged toward the crowd with his sword. He swung his divine sword with no regard for his own safety. He slashed out sword radiance to block the swish of the golden light blades. At the same time, he cast a purple light shield to protect the black-armored warriors and golden-armored martial gods. However, it was all in vain. Swish! 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 With a series of muffled sounds, the purple light shield that covered the sky was smashed into pieces. One after another, the black-armored warriors were struck by the golden blades of light and shattered into pieces on the spot. Even the martial gods in golden armor could not resist the attack of the golden light blade and were instantly cut into pieces. Suddenly, the black-armored warriors and golden-armored martial gods fell from the sky like dumplings. Countless pieces of flesh and blood fell on the ruined ground, and a purple rain of blood floated in the sky. The muffled sounds of the light blades colliding, the anguished cries of the people on the brink of death, and the despairing screams all mixed together and reverberated in the air. In just 20 breaths of time, the 2,000 black-armored warriors were all dead. With their strength as martial sages, they did not have the right to survive the battle of deities. Most of them were instantly killed by the golden blade. Only a few managed to escape from the golden light blades under the protection of the great Emperor of Heaven punishing. However, they were unable to escape the suppressive force of 100,000 miles of heaven and earth, and were crushed into minced meat in just a few moments. Even the more than 30 golden-armored martial gods could not hold on for long. 90% of them were killed by the golden light blades. The remaining few martial gods were severely injured and were barely hanging on. The great Emperor of Heaven punishing was also severely injured. There were dozens of wounds all over his body, and one of his legs had been crushed by the golden light blades. The great Emperor of Heaven punishing gave it his all and performed various secret skills. He even took out 3 supreme-grade true god weapons to protect himself and the few golden-armored martial gods who were severely injured. Under the great Emperor of Heaven punishing's protection, the few martial gods desperately fled to the south. However, Ji Tianqing did not stop chasing after them. After 15 minutes, the few golden-armored martial gods who were severely injured were also crushed into pieces. The great Emperor of Heaven punishing was the only one left in the world, and he was still fighting alone. He continued to flee to the south, avoiding and blocking Ji Tianqing's attacks along the way. However, his injuries were getting worse, and his divine power was weakening. His combat strength was also decreasing rapidly. He gradually calmed down from his initial anger. No matter how unwilling he was, he had to face reality. He had to admit that he had lost. It was true that he could not defeat Ji Tianqing in the world of 5 elements. Ji Tianqing had not shown himself since the beginning. He had only been attacking and hunting in the dark. However, the people around the great Emperor of Heaven Punishing had all been killed. He was the only one left, and he was also severely injured. He had fled for several hours, covering hundreds of thousands of miles. In the beginning, he had thought that Ji Tianqing would eventually run out of energy. When that happened, he would have a chance to escape danger and find a way to counterattack. However, reality had proven that Ji Tianqing's energy seemed to be limitless. Not only had he not run out of energy, but he also showed no signs of weakening. This was too terrifying. This was also one of the reasons why the great Emperor of Heaven Punishing was so shocked and depressed. He had reason to believe that even if he fled for another 1,000,000 miles, he would still not be able to escape Ji Tianqing's pursuit. Moreover, Ji Tianqing's energy would not run out. It seems that Ji Tianqing has completely mastered the law of earth. He can even use that special power. If I continue to fight with him, I won't even be able to touch his shadow. I might even die. A few years ago, I captured him easily and almost killed him. Now, he has forced me into such a desperate situation. This is a humiliation, a great humiliation. The great Emperor of Heaven Punishing thought to himself as he fled. It seems that I can only save my life if I leave this place. Even if I give up this world and the boundless divine stone, I still have a few star regions and billions of people and soldiers. There are still thousands of worlds waiting for me to conquer. As for the world of 5 elements and Ji Tianqing, I have to think about it carefully. After making up his mind, the great Emperor of Heaven Punishing executed a divine technique and prepared to escape the world of 5 elements. He swung his divine sword with all his might and slashed open the sky. Crack! With a loud explosion, a 10-mile-long crack appeared in the sky. White gusts of wind and crimson heavenly flames poured down from the black spatial rifts. The great Emperor of Heaven Punishing passed through the crack in a flash and entered the layer of wind and fire. He was protected by a purple divine light as he passed through the vortex formed by the wind and fire. He flew toward the golden light barrier at an extremely fast speed. When Ji Tianqing saw this, he immediately frowned and was filled with anxiety. He knew that the great Emperor of Heaven Punishing was a great disaster. If the great Emperor of Heaven Punishing escaped from the world of 5 elements alive, it would be difficult to kill him in the future. Ji Tianqing wanted to use this opportunity to kill the great Emperor of Heaven Punishing in the world of 5 elements. However, he did not truly control the entire world. Currently, he only controlled 5 continents. He did not control the depths of the Earth's core, the endless heavenly ocean, or the layer of wind and fire outside the sky. Therefore, Ji Tianqing could not do anything when the great Emperor of Heaven Punishing entered the layer of wind and fire. He could only watch as the great Emperor of Heaven Punishing escaped from the world of 5 elements. Chapter 2647. Bam! The great Emperor of Heaven Punisher passed through the heavenly wind and fire layer and crashed into the golden light barrier. He held the divine sword with both hands and used all his strength to break a hole in the golden light barrier. After passing through the hole, he escaped from the 5 elements world and flew into the vast void. Although he was severely injured and had used up almost all of his divine power, he was at the end of his rope. However, the divine sword in his hand shone with purple light and carried him through the void. He fled into the distance at the speed of light. Swoosh! After a short while, the divine sword carried the great Emperor of Heaven Punisher into the void and disappeared into the darkness. Not long ago, he had brought the Imperial Preceptor and more than 2,000 guards with him, and they had charged over aggressively. Now, he was all alone. He was severely injured and had to flee in humiliation. He could only suppress his deep hatred in his heart and plot revenge in the future. In the core region of the Five Elements world. On the Golden Mountain in the middle of the Golden Light Sphere. Ji Tianqing slowly opened his eyes. His face was filled with regret as he let out a sigh. Sigh. What a pity. He escaped. If I miss this chance, it will be difficult to kill him again. As long as the great Emperor of Heaven Punisher was alive and the Heaven Punisher tribe was not destroyed, there would always be a hidden threat. He could not be at ease. After all, the great Emperor of Heaven Punisher had witnessed the wonders of the Five Elements world and the powerful effects of the Dawn Stones. Even the deity behind the great Emperor of Heaven Punisher was very interested in the Dawn Stones. No matter what, the Heaven Punisher tribe would not let go of the Five Elements world. That was why Ji Tianqing was worried and anxious. Fortunately, he had merged half of the Five Elements world and controlled the 5 continents. Even if the great Emperor of Heaven Punisher came back with the Heaven Punisher army in a few years, he would not be afraid. After this battle, the great Emperor of Heaven Punisher is severely injured. He will not be able to recover to his peak condition in at least 10 years. He will not dare to invade the Five Elements world again if he is not confident. We have at least 10 years. We must use this time to increase our strength. Ji Tianqing muttered to himself and clenched his fists. Then, he looked to his side and saw 2 black dawn stone jade slips floating in the air. He picked up the 2 jade slips and used his divine sense to read the information inside. After reading it, he realized that it was a message from Taihao Yunqi and Yun Yao, informing him of the invasion of the Heaven Punisher race and the arrival of the Heaven Punisher Great Emperor. Ji Tianqing received the scroll from Taihao Yunqi and replied with a message. Great Emperor Tian Fa was severely injured by me. He has already escaped from the world of 5 elements. I have destroyed the Heaven Punishing army and the battleships he brought with him. You don't have to worry. You should first comfort the people of the divine nation, then conserve your energy and strive to break through to the martial god realm as soon as possible. After he finished speaking, Ji Tianqing waved his hand and took out an origin stone jade slip. Swish! Jade simplified turned into a black light, passing through the golden ball of light and disappearing into the endless lava. Then, Ji Tianqing sent another message to Yun Yao. Yao Yao, I'm currently in the core region of the elemental world. Refining the world core might take a few more years. The Heaven Punisher Great Emperor has escaped with severe injuries. He won't dare to attack again for at least 10 years. I have destroyed the Imperial Tutor, more than 2,000 Heaven Punishers, and the Heaven Punishing Divine battleships. You don't have to worry. Take care of the affairs of the 2 divine nations and cultivate in seclusion in the Divine Pagoda. When I'm done, I'll meet up with you and we'll talk about it in detail. Ji Tianqing waved his hand and sent the origin stone jade slip out. Swish! The jade slip flew out of the golden ball of light and disappeared into the raging lava. Ji Tianqing did not waste any more time. He began to channel his energy and entered the Golden Mountain with his mind to refine the world meridian. He wanted to refine the other half of the world and fully control the world of 5 elements. By then, the world of 5 elements would be in a passive position and become active. After all, he would be able to leave the purple heaven star zone with the world of 5 elements. A moment later. In the distorted space in the Jiutian 10 Absolutes Tower. Yun Yao sat upright on an exquisite jade bed, her eyes closed as she circulated her energy to heal her injuries. Swoosh! In a flash, the origin stone jade slip flew over and stopped in front of her. She had been waiting for Ji Tianqing's news. When she sensed the arrival of the jade slip, she immediately stopped channeling her energy. She reached out to take the origin stone jade slip. After reading the information in it, she heaved a sigh of relief. That's great. Tianqing has indeed found a fortuitous opportunity in the depths of the Earth's core. He wants to refine the world of 5 elements. No wonder he can control the divine power of heaven and earth and fight with the great emperor of heaven and earth even though he's not in the 100,000 mountains. This is incredible. I have to tell Ke this good news quickly so that she won't worry. After saying that, Yunyao took the origin stone jade slip and went to find Ji Ku. The situation was just as she had expected. Ji Ku was channeling her energy to heal herself. However, she was restless and worried. She was only relieved when Yunyao gave her the jade slip and learned about the results. The two of them chatted for a while before Yunyao left. She returned to the jade bed to continue channeling her energy to heal herself. Ji Ku also followed Ji Tianqing's arrangement. She first went into seclusion to heal herself before working hard to improve her strength. Soon, the distorted space calmed down. Yunyao, Ji Ku, Bai Long, Qian Yu, Hei Long, Lan Kuan, Chen Chen, Yiya, and the others were all focused on cultivating. Time flew like a shuttle. Time flew like an arrow. Unknowingly, 400 years had passed in the distorted space. After 400 years of cultivating in seclusion, Bai Long, Lan Kuan, Qian Yu, and Hei Long broke through to the true God realm. Among them, Bai Long was the strongest. He had reached level 2 true God realm. Qian Yu and Hei Long were both at level 1 true God realm. The youngest, Chen Chen and Yiya, had also grown up. The siblings were indeed talented and extraordinary. They had both reached level 8 martial God realm. According to the speed of their strength improvement, they might break through to the true God realm in another 100 years. At that time, they would become the youngest true gods. However, the two of them did not change much in appearance. Chen Chen had grown to 5 feet tall. She looked like a handsome young man of 12 or 13 years old. Her appearance was very similar to Ji Tianqing. She had a noble and cold temperament. Yiya was only 2 inches shorter than Chen Chen. She looked like a naive 12-year-old girl. Not only did she inherit Yunyao's beauty, but she was even more beautiful. Although she looked like she was only 12 years old, she was already as beautiful as a fairy. She had a noble temperament. She was cheerful, innocent, and kind. Her pair of bright and clear eyes seemed to be able to purify all the evil in the world. Anyone who saw her would be amazed by the beauty of nature and the favor of the heavens. There was actually such a pure, holy, beautiful, and cute girl in the world. Perhaps only the children of the heavens were worthy of such beauty and temperament. As for Yunyao and Ji Ku, they had only cultivated in seclusion for 360 years. After all, they had left the godly pagoda a few times to deal with the matters of Tianqing and Luo Shui. Even so, their strength continued to increase. They had reached level 6 true God realm. Chapter 2648. 400 years had passed in the distorted space. Only 8 years had passed in the 5 elements world. 8 years had passed, but the 5 elements world did not seem to have changed much. There were no invasions, and the continents were as peaceful as before. The people lived and worked in peace, and the martial artists worked hard. The martial arts world was becoming more and more prosperous. Even if there were some small disturbances in the 5 continents, it was just a struggle between countries and factions. Only a few people knew that the world of 5 elements had actually undergone earth-shattering and world-shaking changes. Because a certain person who was good at creating miracles, had monstrous talent, and was the reincarnation of a divine king, had taken control of the entire world. The golden ball of light at the world's core was a mysterious space. The flow of time inside was 10 times faster than in the 5 elements world. 8 years had passed in the outside world, but 80 years had passed in the world's core. For 80 years, Ji Tianqing had been sitting at the peak of the Golden Mountain, refining the world's veins without stopping for a moment. His divine power had been exhausted more than 10 times, and his divine blood had been drained several times. He had also been unconscious for more than 20 years. However, he had merged with the five elements world, and the Golden Mountain would always release the world's power to nourish him. It was because of this that he was able to survive unscathed. His divine power would recover when it was exhausted, and his divine blood would be reborn when it was drained. As long as the five elements world was not destroyed, he would not die. Now, he had refined 99% of the world's veins, and almost controlled the entire world. The five continents, the endless sky sea, and the endless rock and lava deep underground were all under his control. There were only a few mysterious areas deep in the Earth's core that he had never been able to refine or touch. Those mysterious areas were like forbidden areas to him. With his current strength, he could not lift the veil of mystery, let alone control them. One of the areas was in the center of the ruins of God, the deepest underground. Ji Tianqing could guess that that area was the cemetery of the gods in the ruins of God. The cemetery of the gods had always been the five elements world's greatest secret. Whether it was in his previous life or this life, Ji Tianqing could not unravel the mysteries within. Now, he had become the master of the five elements world, but he still could not touch the cemetery of the gods. He finally understood that the cemetery of the gods was more mysterious and powerful than he had imagined. Other than that, there were a few other forbidden areas that were similar to the cemetery of the gods. There was almost no difference between being mysterious and being powerful. This made Ji Tianqing's heart itch, and he couldn't help but speculate and analyze. The mausoleum of the gods can even bury godlords and god-kings. This has always been the greatest secret of the five elements world. Perhaps only a divine king expert would have the chance to unravel the mystery. Unexpectedly, there were several forbidden areas in the world of five elements that were as mysterious as the graveyard of the gods. This further proved that the former five elements world was definitely not inferior to the dragon realm and the god realm. It was also an eternal primary world. However, the current world of five elements was obviously damaged and abandoned, and that was why it had fallen to such a state. He really wanted to recover to the God-King realm as soon as possible and unravel the mystery of the five elements world. Only then would I be able to understand what exactly happened in the ancient times. Ji Tianqing murmured, his eyes filled with hope and desire. Although his heart was filled with regret, he thought about it and felt slightly comforted. Although I can't touch those forbidden areas right now, I can't. However, I have complete control over the world of five elements and have already lived and died with it. Not only have I reached level 9 true God realm, but I can also control the world of five elements to leave this void and even leave the Zishao starfield. That's right. Ji Tianqing had cast spells on the Golden Mountain for 80 years. Not only had he controlled the entire world, but his strength had also reached level 9 true God realm. If not for the restrictions of the heavenly Tao, he could have broken through to the heavenly God realm. This result made Ji Tianqing realize a problem. The world of five elements in the ancient times was once an eternal primary world that could give birth to God spirits above the heavenly God realm. However, after the world of five elements was damaged and abandoned, it fell into the 3,000 mortal worlds and its level dropped. Under the restrictions of the heavenly Tao, it was impossible for the world of five elements to give birth to a heavenly God realm expert. Now that I have reached level 9 true God realm, my strength is the same as Great Emperor Tian Fa's. In the mortal world, I am already invincible. If I fight Great Emperor Tian Fa again, I will definitely be able to kill him easily. It's time to take revenge and completely destroy the Tian Fa tribe. Ji Tianqing gathered his thoughts and stood up slowly with his fists clenched. Let's try out the power of the great space shift first. He muttered to himself. His mind connected to the meridian of the world and used the power of the world. Swoosh! A golden divine light flashed, and he disappeared from the Golden Mountain. In the next instant, he left the core of the world, crossed hundreds of millions of miles, and appeared on a barren mountain in the north of the ruins of God. Swoosh! It was early in the morning, and the warm sun shone on the mountain peak. Suddenly, a golden light flashed, and Ji Tianqing appeared out of thin air. His feet landed on a millstone. As soon as he landed on the ground, he felt dizzy and blurred. He staggered and almost fell. This is my first time using the power of the world. The distance is too far, and my divine soul can't take it. Ji Tianqing mumbled awkwardly. He smiled bitterly and said, "Looks like I need to get used to it. When my divine soul is strong enough, I will be able to come and go freely in the world of 5 elements." With that, he took out the small golden tower and inserted his divine soul. Swoosh! The small golden tower emitted a dazzling divine light that immediately engulfed his body. Then, he entered the 9 heavens 10 absolutes tower and appeared on the 5th floor, standing in the origin divine formation. Through the origin divine formation, he returned to the 6th floor. Coincidentally, Yunyao had just come out of seclusion. She was about to leave the divine tower to check on the situation in the Luoshui divine nation. When the two of them met, Yunyao was pleasantly surprised. She quickly went up to him and asked about his well-being. "Tianqing, you're finally back. Is everything done? Your strength has greatly increased again." Ji Tianqing nodded and said with a smile, "Yes, I have refined the core of the world of 5 elements and controlled the entire world. My strength has naturally increased, and I have reached the 9th level of the true God realm. Soon, I will reach the limit of the true God realm and be called a half-step heavenly God. Yao Yao, your strength has also reached the 6th level of the true God realm. I'm sure everyone's strength has increased. The time has come. We have the ability to protect the world of 5 elements and eliminate the heaven punishers. Gather everyone for a meeting. This time, it's time for us to take the initiative to attack." Hearing that, Yunyao was shocked and gratified. She quickly nodded and said, "Okay, I'll go and inform them now." With that, she turned around and flew away happily to inform Ji Ku and the 2 children. Ji Tianqing split up with her to gather by Long, Lan Kuan, Qian Yu, and Black Dragon. In less than 15 minutes, everyone received the news and gathered around Ji Tianqing. When everyone gathered and saw each other's changes and growth, they were all very happy and excited. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.